Good morning, commissioners. Welcome back. I trust you all had a great evening. I understand that while we were in here, it was warm yesterday. It's going to be warm today. If you need a ride to the airport, please let me know. We've scheduled a shuttle at 3:15, so you can let Barbara or I know by the end of the day.
I'll start this.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's go ahead and start with roll call. Venetia, would you like to do a call order? Call roll.
Michelle Andrus.
Here.
Mildred Brown.
Here.
Summer Harding. Havanya Hayes White.
Here.
Sarah Jockum. Betty Carnett. Christina Mills.
Here.
Gloria Perez Stewart. Lester Pinku. Gina Plate. Kayla Rodriguez.
Here.
Shirley Solomonson.
Here.
Mariano Sanz. Barbara Schulman.
Here.
Steve Winlock.
Here.
Leanne Liebes.
Here.
Great, thank you, Venetia. Let's move on to the flag salute. Kimberly, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right, we're going to jump in. Barbara, would you like to go over the agenda for today?
I'll second that. No. No, I promise. No more, I promise. We're going to start with an assessment update, which is always great. We're going to have an update on the development of the California's accountability system. We're, of course, having one of the best things we do every year, the GOAL Award, which is the Grazer Outstanding Achievement and Learning Award, which is always wonderful. We up here on the panel have lunch with our GOAL recipients. We get to talk to them. It's nice. We're going to have results of elections by Mildred. We're going to have our state special education director, Kristen Wright, give us a report and general comment, as we always do at the end, and then agenda building for our next meeting, which is August 2nd and 3rd.
Thank you, Barbara. So, welcome. Yes, Mildred.
If I could encourage, for those who've not completed the election form, if you could give it to me or directly to Venetia, and they will tally the results and let us know. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mildred. Thank you for chairing that committee. All right, we have a couple announcements. First, I'll hand it over to our director, Kristen Wright.
I just want to make a quick announcement because she's not going to be here later, but I know you all are aware that we are fortunate to have hired an associate director in the special education division. As you know, for years, Fred Balcom and Chris Druin led the division, and Fred retired and then Chris retired. And so the associate director position became open. And so I know you all saw her and some of you met her last time, but I'm pleased to announce my new associate director, Heather Carlson, is here. And she has to leave in a little while, but I want to make sure that you all got to say hi to her. I'll ask her to come up and say hi for just a minute, maybe tell us a little bit about where she comes from, because she comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience. And as I looked at the areas that to fill in some of the gaps that I have, and for us to sort of complete the team in the director's office, she is really a valuable asset. And as you know, traversing the bureaucracy is not easy. And Heather has been working within the bureaucracy, and particularly around fiscal and fiscal policy, for a long time. So we're really fortunate to have her here, and I hope you will take some time to get to know her over the next few years. And she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. So we welcome Heather. Do you want to come up and say hi?
Woohoo! Welcome, Heather.
Hi, so I'm Heather Carlson. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I actually started what I considered my first career was actually at a SELPA. It was Placer, Nevada, and I got lucky that one of the program specialists there had heard of the college that I attended and said, scoop her up. So I started at the Placer, Nevada SELPA in '97 and was the data and program analyst. So I did all of the case miss, walked around for a year with a steno pad, writing down acronyms, going, what does that mean later? So, and after that, I was there for about 4 years and then went to the Department of Finance and actually worked in education. And they were like, ooh, you have a special ed background. Here, you can have the special ed assignment. So I spent 5 years at finance kind of doing the special ed assignment, and it was very nice because I got to really bring the experience from the field to the department to kind of help steer the ship towards things that I felt were really necessary in special ed. It's always kind of had a very special place in my heart. So it was always, I feel like I've spent my career kind of advocating and helping people understand the dynamics and that these are additional supports, but every student is a general ed student, and these students shouldn't be treated any differently. They just need additional supports. And so helping people kind of understand the different acronyms and the differences that people associate with special ed. So I was able to kind of do some things, mitigate some problems, kind of keep things going when we were having some big issues like 3632. And then when I left finance, I came here and worked in fiscal policy and continued to do special ed policy for the department, and then ran the budget office here. So I'm very familiar with the state budgeting process, and I have finance knowledge of special ed finance specifically for about 19 years. So I'm bringing all of that plus my passion to kind of bookend my career to start and end in special ed. So I'm very honored to be here. Kristen is a fantastic director and mentor. I've met with this group on many occasions giving budget updates. Definitely some new faces now, but I'm glad to be back, and please let me know if there's anything I can ever do to help. I have a wealth of knowledge and history in my head that I'm happy to share with any and everyone that asks. So thank you for the welcome, and I look forward to many years with this committee. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Heather. Welcome. All right, other announcements. Christina, would you like to make an announcement? I know today's a big day.
Yeah, today is a big day. Thank you, Gina. I've sent those of you who I have cell phone numbers for a text message. And as you know, I do disability rights and organizing. Today is National Healthcare Call-In Day for Children. And I have the switchboard number for Capitol Hill and would encourage all of you to make a call in opposing healthcare reform or repeal. And I specifically am pointing that out for our commission because lots of people don't understand how Medicaid, and I think we all know that's Medi-Cal in California, impacts educational funding for students with disabilities and in a variety of other ways too. So I want to give you the switchboard number. If I didn't have your phone number to text it to you, if you'd like to make that call, I'd like to encourage you to do it. It's area code 202-224-3121. And I just want to let you know that the process is you dial 1 to get your senators, and then you will be asked to submit your zip code, and it'll come up and say, would you like to connect with Harris or Feinstein? You'd have to call back to do it a second time for the opposite senator. I got voice messages both times this morning, but that's fine. Those messages are just as important as a live call. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Christina. Okay, other announcements before we jump in. Okay, just a reminder for those folks in the public, thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to make a public comment on any item, there are public comment cards in the back. Please give them to Venetia. It is our intent to do public comment after each item and then do general public comment at the end of the day. So we welcome you. We appreciate your engagement. Well, with that, we are right on track. Let's jump into item number 9. And I'd like to invite Mao Vang, who is an education administrator in the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress Systems, otherwise known as CASP, and she's going to give us an update. Now, Mal, while you're getting situated, I have to let you know that yesterday, during our liaison report, Summer was singing praises of the assessment division for the partnership and including us in your conversations and being open to the feedback and the ongoing collaboration. So I just want to thank you. And if you'll pass that on to your director, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much, Summer, and thank you for the feedback. We appreciate that. And
We can't hear you, so.
you can't hear me? Maybe I'm
There you
just
go.
too short. Let's bring this down a little bit. Okay. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Mao Vang. I am the administrator supporting Michelle Center at our Assessment Development and Administration Division. It's my pleasure to present in front of you today. It's my first time, so be gentle, but I'm here and ready to engage with you. I would like to introduce a couple of our staff who has joined us, who are here to help me answer any of your questions should I not be able to address them. I have Deborah Baumgardner and John Boven. Anybody else from our department? No. And then I also have Grace Yu from our educational testing contractor, educational testing services, who is our contractor, who will be able to assist us with any questions as well. So you all could see the presentation, right? So I'll just kind of drive on now. I'll just do this. Yeah, this is probably just better if I just do this. Okay. In this presentation, I'm going to cover the following information. I'll provide a quick overview of what's in the State Board of Education June memo, so we won't spend a lot of time in the, I invite you to review that. And I'll do another quick overview of the status of our summative assessment administration. I know that Michelle has gone over a number of new and upcoming features of the CASP system with you in the past, in the April meeting and probably prior as well. So I was hoping to show you a quick 3-minute presentation on the new features of the Desmos calculator, but it seems like we don't have Wi-Fi, but I do have the link there. Perhaps you can watch it when you have access to Wi-Fi. But I will talk about how we are using the Desmos calculator to ensure that we have accessibility to learning math and love learning math for all of our students, and how it's embedded into our assessment system as well. And then I'll go more specifically into the California Alternate Assessment for Science pilot. As you all know, we have started on the initial pilot this year, and we do have some results from our test examiner survey that I will share with you. And then I will talk about the item review workshops that did go on last week and this week, and how that's how we're reaching out to our educators to inform the process for us. And then I'll cover the 1% threshold for alternate assessments and what that means. And then I'll share some resources with you at the end regarding the California alternate assessments. And I figured this group, we could focus on that assessment and be more informative. So as I mentioned, in the June memo, we do have a more specific information about the summative, the Smarter Balance summative assessments, the CASP post-test workshops after every year when all the summative assessments are nearing the end. We have a number of post-test workshops throughout the state that goes through how to read the reports, how to look at the students' scores, and how those scores can inform our teaching and learning practices. And then there's also a link to the Smarter Balance sample item website that really covers a specific item and how you could experience how the students are experiencing that specific item. And then there's also information about the alternate assessments, the science pilot, the Spanish assessment, and also the interim assessments that we're not covering in this presentation, but it's also in the June memo. Then we also talk about the Smarter Balanced Digital Library in there and how we're responding to federal peer review of our assessments and any additional information that they are requesting. We have a quick technology update there, and then just an outline of the outreach and professional development activities that we've been doing throughout the state and reaching out to educators. Okay. So in this table, it's a lot. Even though it's a small table, I try to put, there's a lot of information in there. So in our summative test administration, or administrations really, because we have our, what you know as our, we are part of the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, so we get our English Language Arts and Mathematics assessment through that consortium. And all students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 access that. And we have an estimated total of about 3.3 million students who take it. That's a lot to get through. And as of June 5th, about 3.2 of them have completed at least one test. So if you think about a computer, if English Language Arts has a computer adapted component and a performance task, that's 2 English tests for each student, and then 1 math, computer adapted, and 1 performance task. And 97% of the students have at least completed, one of those tests. In total, when you think about all these tests together, it's probably over 14 million tests that all these students have to access. So the number of students times the number of tests they have to take the numbers are just phenomenal. And then we also have the California Alternate Assessment for English Language Arts and Math. And if the students, this is for our students who have significant cognitive disabilities that they cannot access the regular or the Smarter Balance summative assessments in English and Math without, even with accommodations. So we do have about 40,000-ish students who are in those same grade levels who are accessing that. And as of June 5th, 98% of them have taken at least one of those 2 tests. And then you are aware that we have the California Science Test pilot going on for students in grades 5, 8, and 1 high school grade that's been assigned to the high school, a specific grade in either 10th, 11th, or 12th grade at the high school. And we have about 1.5 million students in those grade levels taking that pilot. That, for a pilot test, that the numbers are just huge. And as of June 5th, 88% of them have taken that science pilot. And then the pilot that I'm really going to focus on more is the last one, the California Alternate Assessment for Science pilot for our students who have the significant cognitive disabilities that we want to ensure they access science as well. And whatever science grade assignment is assigned for the California Science Test, the students in the alternate also take that. If they are in that grade level, they take the test in that grade level. So there's about 18,000 students. And as of June 5th, 75% of them have already accessed that test. So it's a small table, but mighty. You think about capturing all the work that is going on this spring. And even right now, there's still some districts that are testing. They'll be testing until the middle of July. So this is not complete yet, as you can see. All right. And then I was going to show you our the one new feature is we are already using this, the Desmos calculator. It's an online graphing calculator that really does increase accessibility for all students. I was going to demonstrate, but I think at this point in time, we don't. Oh, we did. You know what? I hope that we do have it. Okay. To action needed. Okay. Let me see if there's something. Yeah, maybe. Okay, I'm just going to escape out of here. now. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. The guest one, or should I just go into ours? Okay. Okay. Yay. Okay. All right. It's happening, and we're good on time. So let me see if we have volume. Okay. We do. Okay, hopefully not blast your ears. So give me. Okay, we'll see how it sounds. Okay. Okay. Do we need to do that again? Okay.
Hang on a second. Let me,
Okay, I'll let you drive.
I don't know what we have here. Okay. Oh, I see.
Mal, while we're waiting, this accessibility feature or this calculator is available to anybody now. Is that correct?
That's right. It's embedded into our assessment, and it's also free.
Mm-hmm.
To download and use it throughout the year.
So it's embedded in the assessment, but it's also accessible, or it's available separately. So if classrooms wanted to start using it, so students were familiar with it prior to the test, that's possible as well.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, and it does have Braille as well. I just couldn't, demonstrate it here because I need additional devices.
Mm-hmm.
Demonstrate that. So the students who have devices that can access it, they could use it.
Very exciting.
I could do it on a Mac, but somehow I can't do it on the
It's okay.
we need additional.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a buffering thing going on. That's all this is about. Now we'll try this. Does it have volume too, or is it just a?
Yes, it does have.
Should be hearing it.
You're hearing it?
Should be hearing it. Hello. Yep. Mm-hmm. It's HDMI, so you see it on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Should be getting something. Let me see here. Let's reload real quick. One moment, please. Boy, it's not very happy right now. Give me a second while I try something else. Yeah. I'm going to try another audio source here.
And I think, Mal, do we have your presentation so we could continue? You want to continue talking while he works on?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Okay.
sorry, but let me play with this a bit here.
Great.
Let's do that. That's a great idea. Okay. So, and I wanted to share a little bit more specific information with you about the alternate pilot.
There you go.
The California Alternate Assessment for Science pilot. Yes?
There you go.
Better? Okay. All right, so as you may remember, Michelle had come here and presented about our pilot, and the initial pilot consisted of an embedded performance task, right? That uses the core content connectors that are aligned to the California Next Generation Science Standards. And in there, after the test examiners and the students take the embedded performance task, the test examiners respond to a survey. So we have the results for that. So I'm on slide number 7. As of June 12th, there were about 3,779 teachers or test examiners who have responded to this survey. And this really gives us information to inform us about how this pilot is happening and how educators and students are engaging with it. So one question was on the clarity of instructions for students. So as indicated in that pie chart, I hope you could see a little bit better.
I'm going to do a restart here, okay? So
Okay.
just keep doing what you're doing.
All right. So you can see. Okay, so if you look at it, there's 27.1% who noted that the students found the directions for administration very clear. Well, that's not as much as we like, right? But 45.9% noted that the students found the directions somewhat clear. So, you know, in total, it's over half. However, 15.2% responded that the students find the directions somewhat confusing, and 11.8% indicated that students appear to find the directions very confusing. So for this special population, we want to make sure that all the directions are very clear. There's not a lot of cognitive load or too much vocabulary. So this is good feedback for us too in developing the next round.
Val, can you clarify for me again? Is this the students answering questions at the end of their test, or is it the teacher reporting on the students' ability to understand?
This is the teachers reporting on the students' ability to access the directions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So are there moderate to severe special education teachers assisting you in creating the directions?
I believe that we have people on our panels. Grace? She helps develop the test. I'll have her answer that. We have some of the items. Oh, come to the microphone.
In some of the item review committees that where we bring in educators, some of the educators are moderate to severe educators with that specialty.
So they're actively writing the test directions. Is that what I'm getting?
They are reviewing it to see if it's something that their particular students would be able to understand.
Right.
They look at it to see if it's, they comment on how, whether their students would be able to understand the information as it's presented in the test itself.
Thank you.
So we really do want educators to be engaged in this process, so it's not done in isolation. Another question that we did ask was about clarity.
At Desmos, our mission is to help every student.
All right.
Magic.
Let's just
Magic.
listen.
Let's do this. And then I don't know which presentation is yours, but you'll be able to
It's
find
okay,
it. Right?
I'll find it.
Learn math and love learning math. With that in mind, we've introduced improvements to our free online graphing calculator to ensure that students who are blind or visually impaired have the same opportunities as their peers to discover the joy of learning math. In this video, we'll take a brief look at these new accessibility features. Let's start by turning on the screen reader.
VoiceOver on Chrome, Desmos Graphing Calculator window, expression 1. You haven't written anything yet.
Next, I'll write an equation. Note how the screen reader calls out the position of the cursor to guide my entry.
Y equals X superscript 2. After superscript 2, baseline, minus 1. Denominator, 2. After start fraction, 1 over 2, end fraction.
Let's try another equation.
Expression 2, edit y equals C O S left parenthesis x right parenthesis. Expression 2, y equals cosine left parenthesis x right parenthesis.
Did you catch that? Desmos works with the screen reader to ensure correct interpretations of sine, cosine, roots, fractions, and more. Now for some fun. Let's turn on audio trace by pressing Option T.
Audio trace on.
I can now use the right and left arrows to navigate along the curve while the screen reader calls out the coordinates.
Intercept at x 0, y 1, x 0.2, y 0.9801, x 0.4, y 0.9211.
Press Tab to jump from one point of interest to another.
Intersection at x 1.0141, y 0.5284, 0 at x pi over 2, y 0. Extremum at x pi, y minus 1.
And finally, press H to trace automatically along the curve.
Playing graph.
It's worth lingering here to call out a few details. First, we trace along the graph from left to right. Next, the tone changes to indicate the vertical position of the graph. When the graph is below the x-axis, we introduce some static into the audio, further helping students establish a sense of the graph's position in the plane. Finally, points of intersection are called out with a delightful little pop. Let's play it again. See if you can hear those 4 audio features. To learn more about our accessibility features, including how to configure the screen reader on your own device, how to activate audio trace, and where to find a comprehensive list of keyboard shortcuts and commands, visit www.desmos.com/accessibility.
So, even though that was a bit fast, we just wanted to show you quickly some of the features that students have access to, so that I really wanted to show you the Braille, but we just couldn't do that one demonstration. So I thought this quick little video, at least you could see that they're putting in some accessibility features so that more students who may have audio needs, they could also access even math online. Okay? I believe, which one was mine now? Oh.
Uh-oh.
Which one?
Oh, there you go.
This
Yep,
was
you got
mine?
it.
Okay. Right, I think I know where I left off.
Good job.
Okay, so we were on this slide, and okay. Yes.
Reported what the student said.
Yes, this is for the examiner's survey. Okay, can you all see on your screens now? Okay, 'cause this the display is a little bit different for me now. So, all right, so we also asked about clarity of instructions for test examiners. Were the directions clear for them? And of course, 6.2% of the examiners noted that the instructions for test examiners were very clear, and 40.9% noted that the instructions were somewhat clear. So about 23% responded that the instructions for examiners were confusing or very confusing. So we know that there's more work to do, and we want to make sure that they are involved in the process and that it reaches all the examiners in a meaningful way. We also asked about student engagement with the performance task, right? Because that is very important to us. And about 62.5% of the respondents noted that the students appear fully engaged or mostly engaged with the performance task. So although the majority of the students appear to be engaged, there's still about 37.6% who indicated that students appear somewhat engaged or not engaged at all in the pilot. So we want to make sure that we address that as well. Okay, I believe I was on that one. Okay. And then in terms of summary of, we also asked the use of exemplars during the performance task. And about 47.2% of the respondents said they did use the exemplars for all students, and 32.6% responded that they used it for a few or none of the students at all. So this survey gave us overall, this is all the results I will share with you on the survey. This survey also, it gave us feedback directly from the examiners to help inform how students and teachers are responding to this small but very important pilot of the California Alternate Assessment for Science. Yes.
Can you remind us what exemplars are, please?
Sure. I will bring Grace up too, because she works with it every day and she's better to explain it.
In the science pilot, test examiners had the option of modifying certain elements of the pilot if they wanted to. For example, if there was an embedded PT on a predator-prey relationship, they could choose to represent a different predator-prey that was different than the one that was provided, and the exemplar is the one that we provided beforehand.
Okay, I have one more question then. Do they let you know what they changed it to so that you can see if more people changed it to the same thing? That would be something you might want to do? I don't know if that's a question asked.
For the pilot, we didn't collect that information, but for the next pilot, we are looking to have that information as something that is collected.
Thank you so much.
Hi. My assumption is that we would have probably had a similar survey for CAST science. And what is the acceptable threshold for engagement and clarity? So what are our goals both in CAST, and do we have similar goals for the alternative assessment?
Goals for engagement?
For engagement and clarity.
In clarity and instructions, I mean, I don't have a specific number, but we want to make sure that it is accessible not only to the students, but also to the examiners, that they find the directions not confusing and that they can articulate it to their students, because this population has high need. So we want to make sure that it's not so loaded with a lot of vocabulary, so and that it doesn't hinder the comprehension while they are engaging in these tasks. Any other thoughts? Okay. So as we mentioned, the CDE and ETS did host item review workshops, and we brought in teachers, educators, especially the ones for the California Alternate Assessment for English, Language Arts, and Math last week. That went really well. They were very passionate. I stopped by there a couple days, and they are very passionate educators who really want this test to be very useful and very informative of what their students can do and be able to demonstrate. And then we did bring in many of the same educators to review the California Alternate for Science items this week. And I believe it says, I believe they might be done. Yes, so it says we were holding these days, but I believe they're already done with that because they understand the process and were able to give us a lot of feedback. So we did invite, and we always look for educators who have special education experience for all of our reviews. One other thing I wanted to share with you was the 1% threshold on alternate assessments. As I mentioned this morning, I'm talking mostly about the alternate assessment. As part of the Every Student Succeeds Act regulations, we are required to have local educational agencies to notify the state if they expect to exceed 1% of students taking alternate assessments. We do have the justification form at this link, and since this presentation, we have changed the due date to July 14th, so they have more time to look at their data and estimate whether they may reach or go over that 1%. And while we are required to collect, to notify the U.S. Secretary of Education and to post information publicly, there are no repercussions to either the district or the state at this time. Overall, the intent of this regulation is really to help address concerns about disproportionality related to potentially over-identifying students to take an alternate assessment, so it's a process. And then I have a few quick links to resources for the California Alternate Assessment here for you. A fact sheet about the English language arts and math, and then a guide, a reference guide for that, those two tests. And then we have the science informational video. It may have been presented to you at an earlier time, or if not, it's another resource for you if you could kind of look at how the alternate performance tests were done. And then if you have any questions, here's our contact, our email and phone number for the CASP line. Okay. Do you have any more questions? Yes?
In the 1% threshold exceeding in a state, if we go beyond that, is there any follow-up, or is there do we examine why we had over 1%? Or I'm thinking about in the, it relates to the disproportionality also. So is there any understanding about that?
Yes, at this point in time, I don't believe we will go over that. However, there's certain local educational agencies, like a county office program, they may have more students, so they will go over that. But this is a process for them to report that so that we can inform not only the U.S. U.S. Secretary of Education office, but also, for our own understanding about where these sites are. So some things we are expecting, and we know that they will report. And it's due to the nature of their program. So I also have Kristen Wright too, if she has any additional insight about, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've had a number of individuals, stakeholders, parents, teachers talk about with regard to this population of students with the most significant cognitive disabilities is that, why are we doing this? Why are we having every student in California take a test? And I understand, having a child myself with significant disabilities, that sometimes that can seem overwhelming, or you're not exactly sure what the benefit of that is to the student. What I know personally, and I know from the whole reason that we're doing this, and the whole reason that this is part of the federal requirements, is that we don't want to underpotentiate any person. And the reality is this population is extremely varied. And as we all know, that we don't know what a lot of this population knows, because communication is their biggest barrier. And so having access to curriculum and instruction in their grade level standards for science is important. And a lot of times, unless you have something at the end that says, this is the expectation, and so we back map from that expectation, we don't have that expectation. And so I know for parents, it's been maybe confusing or perplexing as to why we're doing this. But as a parent myself, I have my own daughter take the assessments, because I know that for her special ed teacher, it also gives them leverage to be in the conversation around curriculum and instruction. And that unfortunately is fairly new in some cases, especially around the population of students with more significant disabilities. And so I don't think anyone would think that we're just having kids take a test to take a test. There's a larger purpose. Yes, is it somewhat symbolic? Maybe. But the reality is that unless we show that we have those expectations for all students, we can't necessarily count on the fact that every student's getting access to new information, particularly about science. And so we've been working closely with the assessment division to really try to help with the optics and explanation around this so that everyone understands that it's not just because we're trying to abide by a law. It's because we really, truly want to memorialize that we have these expectations for every single student in California. And by not having an assessment for accountability for every student in California, we don't really mean each and every student. So I hope that you all will carry that message back, that I understand there are students that are extremely challenged. However, with them not being able to communicate, we really don't have any idea about what they know. So I want to assume that everyone is able to learn, and their access to new information is going to assist in that process. And that hopefully also as IEP teams convene around assessment, that this is just another reason to acquire communicative competence for this student population so that we can truly know what they know.
All right, thank you, Kristen. Other questions, commissioners, comments? So Mal, for your first time coming to the commission, you did a great job.
Thank you.
I hope we were easy on you as you were hoping for.
Well, yeah, I apologize a bit about the video, but I hope that at least it gives you some insight about what's available to students.
Well, I'm glad we got to see it, and so thank you for the resource. All right, thanks for coming down.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, commissioners, we are moving on to item number 10. And as you know, we always have a standing assessment item and a standing accountability item so that we can stay in touch with the conversations that are happening. And I'm so appreciative of the collaboration with both the assessment and accountability divisions, because they are actively engaged with us and want to make sure we have up-to-date information. So with that, I'd like to invite Cindy Kazanis to the podium to give us our update on the accountability system. Sorry, Cindy, didn't mean to.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Cindy Kazanis with the Analysis, Measurement, and Accountability Reporting Division. And you're ahead of schedule.
I know, I just realized I introduced you and we're actually ahead, so I apologize.
So I know Jenny is going to be joining me any minute now.
Yes.
But I will get started without further ado. I have a PowerPoint and then there's some handouts. So I want to make sure that you all have access to everything. So I guess we'll toggle between the PowerPoint and the handouts as needed.
Great.
So this is our regular update to you on the progress of the development of the accountability system. But of note, we are asking you for some specific feedback on items of interest to you, which is the definition of alternative schools today. We also want to provide you an update on the work of our college career indicator work group. And I'm going to talk briefly about the fall release of the dashboard. So the first operational year will happen in the fall, and so there's going to be some new data and some new functionalities that we're expecting. So in terms of alternative schools, the board, when they were first started talking about the accountability system 16 board meetings ago, which would have been March of 2015, they said from the outset that they really wanted to make sure that alternative schools were treated fairly and appropriately. So from the outset, there was an acknowledgement that we would put together a set of indicators that was appropriate for alternative schools. This is, I think some people call it the ACSE model, you know, thinking about our old, but I want to move away from using that word, and we're just going to call it alternative schools indicator. So with that, the board actually directed us to develop indicators for alternative schools that appropriately evaluate the success of their work on the local control funding formula state priorities, and also to make sure that they meet the needs of accountability requirements that are required in ACSE. We have, for the last year, been trying to put together a task force on this, and we were successful in partnering with the Gardner Center at Stanford, who has helped us with logistics, and they have funding from the Stewart Foundation actually to help pay for folks to get to Sacramento and have conversations. The intent of the alternative schools indicators is not to actually create a separate dashboard, separate and apart, but to have a dashboard that has performance of all, not only all student groups, but all school types. But just make sure that that we would have, again, separate indicators that are appropriate for alternative schools. There's two examples on the slide here. The first is using a one-year graduation rate versus a four-year cohort. And the second is including measures for alternative schools in the CCI. We have, as we've talked about in our previous presentations, the dashboard that you currently see removes alternative schools from considerations. So all the calculations that we've done on the indicators, the performance categories you see relate to traditional schools, not to the alternative school universe. And so with that in mind, I think it's really important that we make sure that, again, that these measures that we're developing are appropriate for that population of students. So who is an alternative school? And we really look at the school type in the education code for our primary focus, which is the majority of these types of schools. But there's also alternative schools of choice and charter schools that can apply through that old ACSE process. So the board defined that process back in 2003 and had not been revisited since up until last month, or rather last month in May of 2017. What the state board criteria said was that these schools must demonstrate that 70% of their students are comprised of high-risk groups. So I'm going to switch from the presentation to handout 1 to talk through the criteria.
Which one do you want to bring up?
Item 1, handout 1.
Handout 1, okay.
Okay, so this is handout 1, and these are schools that do not have a school type defined in education code. And again, we reference the word ASAM because this was the prior system, and this is actually part of the language of education code. The high-risk groups that, are currently in there are expelled. You can see the ed code section, including situations in which enforcement of the expulsion order was suspended more than 10 days in a school year, wards of the court or dependents of the court, pregnant and or parenting, recovered dropouts, habitually truant or habitually insubordinate and disorderly, and then retained more than once in kindergarten through grade 8. These were the definitions in 2003. What we want to do is expand that definition to include 4 more. So students who are recovered dropouts, but again, we have a subset of that bullet that says students who are designated as dropouts pursuant to the exit codes and withdrawal codes in CalPADS, or number 2, or subset B, I would say, is left the school and were not enrolled in a school for a period of 180 days. Number 2, we would like to add students who are credit deficient. And in this example, we say students who are 1 year or more behind in credits. To graduate on time per grade level from enrolling in the credit requirements. Number 3, students with a gap in enrollment, students who had not been in any school in the 90 days prior to enrollment in the current school. And then number 4, students with high-level transiency. So they've been enrolled in more than 2 schools during the past academic year, or for more than a total of 4 secondary schools. So before I judge your reaction, I wanted to make sure that I did express that we did have, the task force did meet and they did respond to or have feedback on these 4 definitions. And if anything, they felt that they were too high of a standard. And didn't want to, as an example, wait 180 days for a student to be out of school before engaging. So we have received some of that feedback already, so I want to make sure that you're aware that we already have some suggestions on changes to these definitions as we move forward. But let me make sure that as I'm toggling back between this PowerPoint, that I'm asking you the right questions. Okay. I think I'm going to. So I think it's probably easier to work off of the handout right now and to ask the questions. But the one type that we have not yet talked about, but we'll talk about in a second conversation, is special education schools under the jurisdiction of districts. So we'll keep that as a separate conversation. So for right now, if we can limit this to just these high risk, the current definition, as well as the additions that are mentioned. So
Cindy,
do you have
let me ask a
concerns?
question before
Yes.
you go on? Sorry, go ahead, Mildred.
So in regards to the new definitions as far as the high-risk groups, so this means that the students would have to already be enrolled in, and in most districts, this would be like a continuation program or community day school. So they'd already have to be in a school or a charter that already supports these students?
That's correct. So it's students that these are schools that are focused on these kinds of student populations. So the first example you said about community day, that's already specified in education code, so that they wouldn't, by education code, they're already defined as a school that serves high-risk students. When you're talking about especially charter schools and schools that have been developed around these other types of students, that's when the 70% threshold would come in.
Okay, so then, but first the student has to be able to, in order to be able to have the student access this level of accountability, they have to be able to be enrolled into one of these schools, correct?
That's true, and think about it, this isn't a student accountability system, this is a school and a district accountability system. So while this is based on the types of students enrolled, I want to make sure that we're also talking in the same language, that this is a school accountability and a district accountability system.
So, but I'm saying though, that so if the school isn't designated as being one of these types of schools, yet there are students that are in that school that meet this criteria, then they don't have that same level of accountability?
Well, so what happens, right? So if you're not currently considered an alternative school in the accountability system, you are receiving performance categories based on performance of traditional schools. So what this process allows for is an application process to be developed. That's what the board agreed to in May. They allowed us to develop an application that would be renewed or reconsidered every 3 years. So prior to that, in 2003, that application process meant once you were in for life kind of thing. We know that schools change. We've had a lot of development, especially on the charter school side, that looks at these types, at least for the ones that are being added. Dropout recovery schools have been more prevalent in the state. And so we want to make sure that they also have the opportunity to opt into this system. But they would have to, they'd have to self-certify that they are serving, majority of their students are part of this population.
So is it advantageous to the school or to the student? And the reason I'm asking is, and this reminds me of the old days as far as tracking. Particularly if you're not already servicing this group of students in a traditional continuation or community day school where those students already have at-risk populations. So I'm just trying to understand, how does this work for a school that hasn't been designated but now has students that quote-unquote could be tracked into the, excuse me, don't let me use that bad language, that could be designated into these high-risk populations?
So let's remember that the first criteria were adopted by the board in 2003. Since then, we've had a lot of charter schools open up whose primary purpose is to serve students who are credit deficient. And so we've had a lot of feedback from these schools and these alternative schools of choice that they are serving high-risk students and they should be designated as alternative schools. But keeping that in mind, remember that we are not developing an accountability system that is less rigorous. We just want to develop indicators that are more appropriate for these schools. So for instance, a dropout recovery school, holding them to a 4-year cohort rate is not appropriate because the students are coming in and they've already not graduated in 4 years. They're dropout recovery. So and students who are going to charter schools who are behind in credits are already not going to graduate on time. So we want to make sure that we have the same types of indicators that we have under LCFF and that meet the ESSA requirements, but that the measurements are adapted so they're more fairly applied to alternative schools. Does that answer your question?
So this is Jenny Singh, the,
Well-
the administrator of the Academic Accountability Unit. She's the one that has run this data and it manages this piece of it. And I think I neglected slide 7. So I want to make sure that I go back to that because we say in there specifically that removing schools from the current accountability system is a serious consideration. And I should have said those words. This is not something to be taken lightly. It's not meant to track students. It's meant to make sure that our accountability system is fair for all schools and districts. So, to your point about whether or not it helps a student or it hurts a student or it helps a school, I think it's supposed to be mutually beneficial. This is supposed to be appropriate for the population of students they're serving. That's why the threshold is so high. And in fact, the board in their deliberations in May said, maybe it's too high. And when we brought that to the task force on alternative schools, they said, it should be high. It means something. It needs to be high stakes. It's meant to be high stakes. You don't want to drop that threshold to 50%. It needs to remain, a high status. If you're serving a population of students, that should be your main focus.
So you're saying that in order for this to apply, that 70% of the students at that school site have to meet these criteria.
That's correct. So that is the top of this handout. So I will scroll up so that you're seeing that information as well. So this would be the definition that would be applied to these new criteria as well. These schools must demonstrate that at least 70% of their school's total enrollment is comprised of high-risk groups, and that's on entry. So a credit deficient school, you would obviously catch up at some point. That's the whole intent of that school. You wouldn't then not be an alternative school. You would remain an alternative school based on the criteria when the students entered the school.
And they do have to take that to the board, and they have to show the board that they do meet this criteria, and it has to be certified by the board before they can send it in to us. So there is a process for schools to go through.
Whether or not it's their Board of Education or
Yes.
it's their charter school
Yeah.
they're authorizing.
It's the authorizing board or.
And the data on the schools will be monitored. I just know that I was over alternative ed, so I'm just kind of reflecting that there was a weakness in regards to the accountability on an annual basis as far as actual data.
So unfortunately, we don't collect all of the data that is in here, so we can't monitor them, but we are going to put in place that they have to recertify every 3 years. So every 3 years, they have to go back to their board and certify that, yes, they are still serving, 70% of their students are still high risk. So we've added that in there to strengthen this piece here.
Thank you.
So the proposed addition, has that been, when is that going to be approved?
That's going to the board in July, and so we are writing our board item now, and so your meeting is very timely because we'd like to be able to inform the board on your opinion of whether or not these groups are appropriate or if we should make changes to the recommendations. We want to make sure that your feedback is included in the board item. And the reason, I'm sorry, and the reason why the timing is so important is because we have to put together a new dashboard for this fall, and we want to make sure those schools that are considered alternative schools are excluded until we create these indicators, which would be fall of 2018. So that's the timing constraints.
And that was my follow-up question, is once you've collected all the information in terms of the schools, and the ones that are already like alternative education under county offices.
You're right.
Will there be another kind of dashboard for them in terms of accountability to see where they're at?
So that's the whole intent, is to then, for the next 6 to 9 months, develop those indicators, which then would feed into the fall of 2018's dashboard. So the board would have to take action on the indicators that are recommended. We're going to keep you all involved in this process. We want feedback from you on anything that the task force recommends, and if you have suggestions on what to include as well, we'll definitely take that into consideration. But the goal is for a year from this fall to have a dashboard that's comprehensive. It reflects traditional schools and it reflects alternative schools as defined under education code and then under this new criteria.
Cindy, can I ask a question? So you clarified a couple things. So you clarified the change that may impact charters, but can you tell me what other schools, and Mildred raised alternative schools as an option, but what other types of schools would be impacted by this change? And I'm thinking, I mean, non-public schools, or what other settings that have a high concentration of at-risk students are going to be impacted?
So not non-public schools, because non-public schools are not part of the accountability system, right?
That's correct.
I would think it's going to be your small necessary high schools. Some schools have set up with schools within a school, like Oakland Unified. Some of their high schools are bifurcated, or Fremont. So they've taken certain students from the mainstream population and put them into a cohort that has students that meet some of these criteria, and as a result of it, they have smaller class size, project-based learning, so they aren't necessarily called continuation, but they have a continuation look or feel because of the students that are in those programs.
Okay.
And some of the charter schools that are now coming forward are taking students who meet these criterias and creating a lot of alternative delivery models as far as instruction.
So I think to the point about, we actually had, one of the task force members is maybe your replacement from Oakland, and I forget her name. Okay, got it. So in Oakland, the alternative schools director is a member of the task force, and we will not include schools within a school unless they reach the 70%, the entire school reaches the 70% population of meeting the high-risk definition. And then that school would actually have to apply. So it's not an automatic opt-in unless you're defining education code as under your school type. Those traditional schools that may have, the programs within the school, it would have to reach that threshold.
Some of those schools have their own CDS code, and so they could apply.
Right.
Yes, if they have their own CDS code, they could apply.
That's the driver. You're right.
So CDS code is the driver behind everything we do.
Okay. Kayla.
So as a county office myself, what about the special ed population that's also being tested?
Probably should just move on to more questions that we have about special ed, because we do have some slides that we presented that we do want to talk about for special ed.
Okay. Okay, so county-operated special education schools will be automatically categorized as alternative because education code dictates them as being alternative. Education code does not provide the same categorization for district-operated special education schools. And the next slide gives you the numbers that of county versus district. So of our 58 counties, 57, it appears, have county-operated special education schools. We have 79 district-operated schools for a total of 136 schools that are special ed focused. The question is whether or not district-operated special education schools should automatically be categorized as alternative schools, or should we require them to apply for alternative status? So to respond to your question, this is how county offices are already opted in for their special education schools if they have a CDS code associated with it. For districts, though, they don't have the same provisions in education code. So do you require them to go through a process even though you know that the whole focus of the school is to serve special education students? This is a question. Sorry, there's a question mark at the end. I apologize. Yeah. Among friends, we may be live streamed, but
no pressure. Steve, and then Barbara.
Do you know, you keep talking about that there are going to be indicators that will be designated for alternative schools. I think what's related to this question too is, for me, what are the indicators that you're going to be proposing? And I'm assuming they're going to be different than what's on the regular ed indicators, which would help me kind of understand about whether special ed would be one of those that we would not want to have in those, to assess in those indicators. What, could you?
Sure. So I know the examples that I used in the beginning maybe weren't specific enough for special education populations, but the two examples I used was using a 1-year graduation rate versus a 4-year cohort. The other thing that, you know, we are allowed to explore under ACSE is a, Kristen, you're gonna have to help me with the terminology, but there is a diploma that an alt diploma that we're allowed to develop, which I know that there is great interest to do. The other piece is including measures for alternative schools into the college career indicators. So there are, I think, things that I understand as far as special education students that they may not be going on to post-secondary, or they may be going into the workforce, and there's certain ways that they're help to be prepared for either of those options, and those aren't reflected in traditional schools. I don't know what those metrics are. Those are things that we need to develop out.
If you could tell us which metrics don't change, are the same across, that might be helpful.
Sure. So the same across are suspension rate, graduation rate, chronic absenteeism would be one, and then on the testing side, what we have not yet done, but we will be doing, is adding in the CalAlt results to the academic indicator as well as the college career indicator. So the students.
Is the big one though, and I think this is where it really applies to students with disabilities, is the allowance for more than a 4-year cohort and graduation rate, because that's something that we've talked about a lot. And so the other one is really about post-secondary outcomes, right? It's the college and career one that you know, maybe at your next meeting, you guys want to really kind of unpack a little bit.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So I guess my question is, I'm trying to think big picture here. Is this going to have school districts, I'm off special ed for 1 second, and then I'll get back to special ed, cause districts to say, you know, we really do in this school have 35%, in this school have 20%, we should be opening up another alternate high school so that they will be smaller class sizes, and so this might be a plus for school districts? A question, you don't have to answer yet. And when you come to special education, and I mean, I don't know if we agree, the truth is they are alternate schools. And we do want them to have the right equipment and the right learning and the right everything, but they are different. And we do need our students to not have to be in a 4-year cohort. I mean, that's a real important part because we want our students to get diplomas. I'm on another committee that really wants that. So for me, I see pluses in this. So.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Mildred, did you have a question?
I guess when you're looking at students that have a, I won't say having an IEP is at risk student, but when you're looking at students who also have IEPs, who also meet those criteria, then is there going to be some accountability around the students being able to, let me just say, many times when students who have IEPs and do go into an alternative setting, the alternative setting preempts the IEP in regards to FAPE. I just know it does. So I know you're standing here saying.
I'm out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
I'll defer to the dais.
I just think that some of those concerns, perhaps back at your task force group, need to be discussed because of the accountability and the guarantee of FAPE for those students who do have IEPs that will be with students who don't have IEPs.
I understand.
Particularly if we're dealing with the concern around LRE and the services that are provided or not provided in those alternative settings.
Helpful. And I do have a point of data that I think may be of interest to you. So there is a significant population of special education students who are in our traditional schools. And in fact, with our subgroup size of 30 at the district level to constitute a student group, a significant student group, we have 80% of students who are special education being reflected in the dashboard, receiving a performance category at a district or a school because they've met that 30 threshold. So they're not being left behind. We did have a letter to a previous group that said that it was 48%, but in fact, that end size does reflect 80% of the student population enrolled in traditional schools. So I think that you will hear over the next couple of months too from us about the focus on student groups, especially the focus on students with disabilities.
Well, based on that, my response to your question would be that they need to apply.
Okay. Yes.
So I do have a concern in terms of the dashboard and that particular group, the special education group. And when you go back to when you're asking if district level should be at the same as county level, and again, this is just locally from my understanding, the county operated schools are mild to severe. District operated schools are, a little bit more functioning. And so with that said, and after the last year's data in the dashboard and how that particular target group was significantly red, my concern, and I'm just going to put it out there, this has given them an opportunity to say, well, let's hold them into a different accountability level because they're not able to meet, or they're not able to be even orange or yellow. So I'm concerned about that. That is kind of a way out.
So you would support then not
Separate.
including them at all, or making them
if
apply
it's a
at
district level school, it should be held to the accountability at the district level.
So they will,
Traditional.
Sorry, it's either the question is whether or not they can opt into the to the alternate accountability system, or we automatically include them. You're asking for another option.
Well, I'm just saying not to go
including
into
them at all,
alternative, exactly.
Not even allowing them to be a part of this.
And can
system
you
at all.
maybe clarify for LEAs, if we're talking about district level accountability and we're talking about schools within a district and the accountability, the alternate accountability for schools, what the relationship is between those? Because I think it's important to note that the first thing is that there's still an expectation of graduation. It's not that we're having a different expectation. The expectation is that a student graduates. And that may the alternate system just gives them more time to do that. They're not penalized for the points you made earlier about dropout and all that. What is the relationship between a school that's in the accountability system for alternate accountability and the district as a whole, or the county office?
What this will allow us to do once we've developed out the academic indicators is everybody's going to be held accountable. They may be held accountable for different pieces and on different merits, but we still intend to have high standards for all, but they need to be appropriate and fair. So there is not any opting out of the accountability system. I know it's sort of a misnomer right now because we don't have those indicators developed. So right now it could be perceived as they're getting a pass. They got a pass in March, they're gonna get a pass in fall of 2017, but the intent is that we need the time to develop this system out. We need it to be fair and reliable, and we weren't able to get to it prior to the dashboard release. But that's been the state board's direction. That has been our intent when we talk about alternative schools, and this is probably the third state board meeting in a row where we've talked about alternative schools. So if anything, it is now on the forefront of their mind, and I think if anything, there is a commitment to having one accountability system. This is not something that's one track here and one track there. This is, the district would see the results of that alternative school in their overall results. So it gets aggregated up to the district.
Mm-hmm. Havania.
Just a comment on my experience working within school districts at schools who were considered special education centers now called transition centers, where students, 100% of the students were taking or are taking the CAPA, now the CAA. I would have to apply for those schools, right, every year. So I would think
Every 3
that
years.
is it 2 or 3?
3.
3 years. Every 3 years, I would have to apply to the state to be recognized as an alternative school.
This is the question on the table, whether or not now that we have a third question on the third option. The original was, one, do they automatically get included? Because we treat them similar to the county-operated schools, that they are serving the same population. Not the same, but they're serving special education students. The second is, should they be required to apply every 3 years? The third, which we heard now, is don't even allow them in the system.
For those particular schools who have students with 100% of the students who are taking the alternate assessment, I would think perhaps they should be automatically categorized as an alternative school.
I'm going to have Jenny come up, because I think the question that you're asking, I believe we have the data on, but I've not heard it approached that way before.
So I'm guessing, well, yeah, we do have that data. So I think we could do a data run that would identify which schools have students, at least 70% or more of their students taking the Cal Alt, and we could automatically opt them in, and then the other schools would not be included. So that is a possibility, yes.
Or they'd have to apply.
But I'm talking about the schools who have 100%.
100 is well over the 70, so it sounds like yeah. And I assume that doesn't change from year to year.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. And what school district is that? Los Angeles? No. Okay. I should know better, I'm sorry. Any other feedback?
So I've been trying to digest
Me too.
the information, and I really appreciate you bringing it to us. And it goes back to our discussions about transparency and accountability, and this being scary. And there's been a lot of conversations about the colors and the colors on the grid specific to special ed. And so I am supportive of the bar. I'm supportive of these expanded definitions. And I appreciate you bringing these questions to us. And I think, I hope the conversation so far has been valuable to you. The one thing I am interested in knowing, and I don't know if I'm calling this the right thing, but modeling or some sort of graph that shows us what this change will look like for each school type. Because I don't have a good sense of the scope of the change and the impact of the change as we look across the state. And you might not have that today, which is fine, but I am.
Neither do we, because
Okay.
we don't collect data in this manner, which is
Right,
why we would
right.
require the school upon applying to self-certify.
I see.
So we do have it by education code, because we know those schools. That's what's in our school directory. We know those types of schools. It's all the other ones that we don't have a good idea of. So the credit deficient schools, we just don't have data collected in it's sort of muddied, I guess. It's not as clean as you'd like it to be.
Sure.
So we will definitely have that after we have an application process, then we can tell you who's opted in and what populations of students, under which category they're serving.
Oh, that's great.
So one more question. Charter online schools that just do credit recovery, would they be part of this? Or would they be somebody that could apply to this? I understand we're not.
So this would be, I'm glad I brought up this handout again. So handout 1, number 2 is students who are credit deficient. It doesn't tell you if we don't distinguish between online charters and in-person, traditional setting charters, in-person charters. We don't have that outlined here. So they would have every opportunity to apply and be considered for the alternative schools indicator.
I just have one more comment around the presentation of this, of the indicators. I would hope that in our design, that we are not creating a separate that somehow that the dashboards that are being done for our regular ed that are also being done on the alternative setup are somehow all in the same kind of system, so that when I pull up I'm looking at school districts, I can easily also see where our alternative schools are in relationship to all of our schools, because I think you really, I don't know if that's kind of in the plan.
That is in the plans. That is definitely the intent.
Right.
It's not to go to another website to
Thank
find
you.
the alternative school dashboard. This
Yes,
is-
because we'll
that's
never
why-
find
yeah.
them. I
So-
mean, or we won't look at it and look at it in a comprehensive kind of review of that. So thank you.
So I think if you think about these as adding indicators as opposed to putting together a model.
Yeah.
When I think of a model, I think of a whole entire separate system. When I think
Right.
of indicators, I think it integrated into the current
That's good.
current system that we've developed.
Right. Thank
So as we develop these out, we'll do
Mhm.
mock-ups for you so you can see how
you.
they're on the same. How about that?
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
That would be great. Yeah, Michelle, go right ahead.
So in my previous role in my school, I worked with both at-risk students in general education and students with IEPs. So I know students just as students who struggle. And so the one thing I can say definitively is that I think this criteria is excellent. And I can tell you that any student who's been out of school for 90 days, there's a reason for that, and that definitely puts them at risk. So that's probably the one that you might get some pushback on people. But the rest of them are very good and I think much needed. Thank you.
Thank you for the feedback. That's very helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Very helpful. Well, we will be changing our memo because you've given us feedback that I think we'll need to consider to maybe change up our recommendation on the special education piece. So we were really waiting to have this discussion before finalizing that. So I do appreciate your feedback. It's really, really helpful. I'm going to turn it over to Jenny now. She's going to talk about the college career indicators. So again, this is outcomes and making sure our students are prepared.
Good. Great. Thank you. And Jenny, while you're making your way forward, we ended up starting this item early, not intentionally. So I'm sorry that we caught you off guard as we were already started when you walked in the room. Thank you for adjusting.
So we are working on our CCI indicator and our alternative task force. They are going to also be addressing the CCI. Because remember, we want to include indicators that are in LCFF for alternative schools. We just want to make sure that for alternative schools, the measures that we're using in these particular indicators are appropriate. So just to remind everyone that the goal of the college and career indicators really to emphasize that a high school diploma should really represent the completion of a broad and rigorous course of study, and that students are really prepared for post-secondary, whether they're going to go into college or whether they're going to go into the workforce. We want to make sure that when students graduate, they are prepared for for post-secondary. And so we are including college and career measures because we do want to recognize that not all students are the same. Students have different pathways. Some are going to go on to college, some are going to go on to technical schools, and some are going to go directly into the workforce. So we want to be able to allow for a fair comparison across all of our schools. So right now, and well, not right now, but always, the only measures that we can put in the CCI are those that are currently collected at the student level. So initially, we had 4 performance levels. You may be aware of this. It was well prepared, prepared, approaching prepared, and not prepared. And that was because we wanted to kind of align it with our Smarter Balanced assessments. But as we were working through the measures to put in the CCI, it became very clear that there was not a lot of robust career data available that was really valid and reliable so that we can do a well prepared for the career. So because we didn't have that, we decided that we were going to proceed with not including the well-prepared category. So therefore, now we have 3 performance levels. Now, we do want to go ahead and bring back the well-prepared category as soon as we have additional career measures, and we're actually working with another a work group on what data do we need to collect to have really more robust and valid career data. So you can see in handout 2 We provided you with what the current CCI looks like, and that's probably what it's going to look like as we move forward in the fall. But like I said, we are working with our CCI work group to figure out what career data we should start to collect in CalPAD. So this is going to be a 2 or 3 year process in order to bring this data in, because it does take time to get the data into CalPADs, and then we have to look at the data to make sure that it is appropriate. And defining career pieces is going to take a lot of extra time, I think. So right now, it's important for you to know that students who are taking the alternate assessment are not included in the CCI. The criteria in there are not appropriate for these students. The criteria, as you can see, students who take AP courses or pass the AP test or complete A through G, or take a CTE pathway, or take dual enrollment at a community college. We didn't feel it was appropriate to include those students in there. But because our alternative task force is going to be looking at additional indicators or measures to be included in the current indicators that we have that are more appropriate, we would like them to evaluate the success of alternative schools, including special education. Oops, wrong way. So I guess what we're looking from you is, as we're working with this task force, are there some measures that you would like us to explore that would be, that we should think about including in our CCI for alternative schools, and especially for special education students, those that take the Cal Alt? So I know we mentioned before about looking at IEPs and things like that. So
I'm just going to jump in because I'm a little confused, because many students with significant disabilities are educated in traditional comprehensive schools that would not be labeled an alternative school. So how are you collecting data on their college and career readiness?
So our focus at this time would be on those students, only those students that take the Cal Alt have been excluded out.
So across the board, it's not just alternative special education schools that we're talking about?
That is correct.
Okay.
So if you're not a Cal Alt student, you are included in the CCI, and you will that will be a determination. They're included in the determination on how well the school is doing preparing their students.
Mildred?
I'd like to see you look at data of the students who come in who were on a diploma track, and then during the course of their being enrolled in the alternative site, that it automatically somehow gets changed. So I'm not sure how you track that, as far as maybe at the time of enrollment, how many students were designated to be on a diploma track, and then in the course of their tenure at the alternative school, how many of those students were redesignated as being on a non-diploma track.
Would you want us to focus specifically on alternative schools or all schools?
I think all schools, and particularly what grade was the redesignation made. I think that's very telling. I think you'll have your racial ethnic data automatically. Also, as far as point of entry, particularly for students who have an IEP and a Section 504 plan, would be some way of being able to monitor their discipline records. Like I said, all too often alternative ed is a different school opportunity for children who have IEPs.
Thank you, Mildred. That's great input.
So every kid has an ITP, right, who has an IEP? So I'm curious how that data is shared with the state, because I work for LA Unified, so everything is computerized and it's easy to pull, but that might not be the case for everybody. So I'm wondering about ITP data.
Yeah, that's a great question, Michelle.
That is a good question. We'll have to talk with our counterparts in the special education division to see if we have access to that data.
Yeah. Barbara.
And I was going to go along with not only the ITP, but it might be good for you guys to contact Workability or Transition Partnership, because they have programs of what they're expecting students to do so that they can leave and be ready for work when you're looking for what is prepared and what isn't prepared. So that's just a suggestion if I understood the question.
Great.
That's great. Other questions, comments?
There's also, I think you already heard, transition centers, and they're collecting data on the number of students that are participating in different vocational programs, the level that they're participating, the age at which regional center takes over, and I would think the regional center would be a good source of data also.
Very helpful, thank you. Any other suggestions?
Yep.
Possibly Department of Rehab. Because they're the ones who might be working with the students who only need help for 90 days and then they leave. So they would have a good idea of what preparedness looks like.
Oh, thank you, that's very helpful.
And there's some rumor that regional center and DOR are working together now, so they might be able to collaborate.
Is this a question also, Barbara, that has come to the what is it called?
I'm on the COP, the Community of Practice for Secondary Transition, and we're working right now on we believe every student should get a diploma. And so when you're talking about these college career, there are many things that you can prove with a career indicator that isn't passing and getting a gold star, but really is what is right for students with disabilities.
Right.
So that's another group that is working on the same thing at the same time.
Great, that's wonderful.
And I am also saying that maybe, I think along the lines of Barbara, if the state wants to create a new metric that schools have to report on, that would not be a bad thing for this population. I think I'd like to see something a little bit more appropriate and flexible and user-friendly, and I think that you'd get teachers behind it. So considering, help determine what that metric might be that's a little bit different than a traditional.
Great. Well, this has been wonderful information, and I'm going to be bringing it back to our task force members as we're working through this. And I may be tapping a few people on the shoulder as we move forward to get additional information. So I think this is a really good starting point for us. So thank you very much.
That'd be great. And Jenny, I definitely appreciate you bringing questions to us to grapple with. We really appreciate the engagement and the opportunity to share the expertise of the commissioners on the work.
I appreciate your feedback because you have the expertise in this area. My expertise is in accountability, not special education. So.
We're partners, right? It takes a village.
It does. It really does. If we want to get it right.
Well, right, yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
We just had one last slide that I wanted, because I know the beginning we were talking about what is the dashboard going to look like. And so for fall, for this fall, we will add in a couple of different functionalities that may be of interest to you. This is based on feedback from users about what is not working. So printing dashboard reports has been clunky, so there is going to be the ability to print them in a PDF format. We are actively engaged with the contractor to make the displays mobile friendly. So if you haven't downloaded the CA Schools app, you should. That is something that the department put out about 2 weeks ago. It's available on the Apple Store app and and on the Android version as well. It's called CA Schools. And what it's done is it's taken the school directory and put it in an app format. And what's nice about it is you can then bring up school profile information. So you can bring up data quest reports about schools in California. It also gives you a map of the schools in an area, so you can see it visually using, I'm not sure if it's Google Maps or something else, but anyway, technology-wise, that's a great place to head, and we're hoping that the dashboard reports will again be mobile friendly by fall, and so it's something that the CA Schools app can pick up as well. We will be reformatting and revising our detail reports, and so some of the information about how many students are in the prepared category
and maybe why they got in the prepared category for the college career indicator are some things that we'll develop out. And we can provide you screenshots or, again, the mock-ups as they become available at future meetings. And then finally, the other clunky part was just being able to search by all schools in a district. It's not really been allowing, functionality is not quite there yet. So those are the high points. There's a lot of other little ones that we'll talk about in the board item, but these are high points that I thought you'd be interested in.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate you sharing those things.
And Gina was really reached out this time to make sure that we were on the same page when we developed the agenda item, and I think that really helped steer this into a place that was relevant to you all, and your feedback's been really helpful today. Thank you. So that's all I have.
Cindy. Okay, well, commissioners, thank you for your time and your engagement. And we are at the end of item number 10. We are right on schedule. So we're going to go ahead and take a 15-minute break while we then prepare for, like Barbara said, one of our most exciting opportunities each year is to celebrate a school. And so we will be, item 11 will be honoring a specific school, the Goal Award winner. So if you'll take a break, and we'll welcome you back here at 11. All right, thank you. All right, welcome back, commissioners. So as you will remember, every year about this time, we take the opportunity to highlight a school that has demonstrated best practices, exemplars, and things that we think should be replicated and shared across the state. The opportunity for the commission to do this was originally funded by Brian Grazer, and we created the Grazer Outstanding Achievement Award back in 2002. Now, the initial investment, we've used it, but because the commission feels that this is such a priority to highlight schools each year, the commission budgets, and we continue to do this, so we have the opportunity to bring best practices forward. And again, as we said this morning, the highlight is getting to have direct interaction with schools and kids and young adults that are benefiting from these programs we bring forward. So I want to first thank Mariano for leading the committee, and then Gloria, Kayla, Michelle, and Steve for being reviewers on the committee. I know that we had an extensive number of applicants this year, and so it was quite the process to narrow those down to one winner. But do want to take the opportunity to acknowledge Rising Sun School, or Rising Sun Farm and Garden, and Superintendent Alfano. Did I say that correctly? Yes. Okay. I'd like to welcome you to the commission and congratulate you on this outstanding program, and then give you the opportunity, and to the folks that I see you brought with you, the opportunity to talk about your program. So welcome.
I would like to introduce our team that is here, because it has been truly a team effort bringing this program to where it is today. First, Dave Hodge, who will be joining me later in the presentation, is our Executive Director of Student Services overseeing special education, and it was his idea to create this program several years ago. We could not have done so without the support of our board, and so I'd also like to recognize our board president, Michelle Bays, who's here with us. Michelle has been on the board for over 20 years, and not only has given her support and the support of the board, but her family farms very close by Rising Sun and has helped us out from time to time in taking care of the site. Jeff Rowe, who's our Executive Director of Career and Technical Education, is with us. We were very pleased to hire Jeff a couple of years ago. He brings about 24 years in workforce development to the table. And during the interview, he also mentioned that he used to run his own landscaping business and enjoys working at a local nursery. So that sort of piqued our attention as well. Raquel Dambatala is going to be our new life skills development instructor at Rising Sun Farm and Garden. Raquel has done long-term subbing, has subbed long-term not only at Rising Sun, but in our SH program at the high school, and so knows many of the students and families already and is familiar with the program. So we're very excited to have her on board. Amy Thorpe joins us as our new operations coordinator at Rising Sun Farm, replacing Rich Kelly, who is retiring. And Amy, again, brings a wealth of experience as an agricultural teacher who's run a school farm both in Davis and in Tracy. Mia Amata, who is our instructional paraprofessional, one of the many talented instructional paraprofessionals at the program. And Mia does a phenomenal job and again goes above and beyond for our students. Ramon Rivera is here. Ramon is our new site coordinator. Ramon was actually involved with some of the construction projects with a contractor, kind of caught wind of what we were doing and said, I'd like to be a part of this. I'm going to be retiring soon. And I said, perfect timing. We're looking for a caretaker. He has come in on his own over the weekends to water plants, make sure the pumps are working on the pond, and now we have a nice home that he's going to be living in on site. William Garcia is a graduate of our Life Skills Development Program, and again, as you'll see in the presentation, we kept the program going with a lot of volunteer support, students and their families coming out on weekends for community work days. William was a part of that. We saw what a great job he did, and we've been fortunate to hire William as a full-time custodian in our district as well. Also joining us are Sean Hicks and his father, Bob Gaspioni. Sean is a current student at the Rising Sun program and has transitioned from the high school and is doing a phenomenal job. So, we'd like to thank the California Advisory Commission on Special Education for recognizing the Adult Transitions Program at Rising Sun Farm and Garden. And we're truly honored by the recognition. And it comes at a very opportune time for us because, as you'll see, the program has been a long time in the works. And we have reached a point with the 2017-18 school year where everything is in place in terms of our vision for the program. As the superintendent for the Patterson Unified School District, I'm also very proud and appreciative of our board, students, parents, and staff, and our community for supporting this vision. As you'll see in our presentation, we've been able to make some significant investments the last 2 years to improve the site and really take this program to its next level. And I hope you'll indulge me for a moment because as a former history teacher, I also can't help myself. I do want to talk a little bit about the history, the fascinating history behind Rising Sun and how it got to this point. This is a school that was opened in 1870, so its history goes back 150 years. And you'll see that it's a very special place and provides a unique environment in which to operate our program. Rising Sun is actually located in the far northwest corner of Stanislaus County in an unincorporated community called Vernalis. It just straddles the San Joaquin-Stanislaus border, and it's surrounded by farms. The school began, again, in 1870 as a one-room schoolhouse, and it was aptly named because its front door faced the rising sun in the east. In 1925, a second building, which will be seen in this picture here, a second building was constructed, and the original one-room schoolhouse was converted to a home for the two teachers, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett. Nice. That's Mr. Garrett in the picture. I think Mrs. Garrett might have been taking the picture, I don't know, but she's not there. And as it was in those days, Mr. Garrett taught the boys and Mrs. Garrett taught the girls, and their own two children attended school there as well. In addition to Vernalis, there are also several communities nearby Rising Sun. Grayson and Wesley, which are located along the San Joaquin River. These two communities were founded by members of John C. Fremont's Army, and Rising Sun opened before the development of irrigation, and most of the school's families at that time practiced a form of dry farming, cultivating wheat. Believe it or not, this hardy variety of wheat, known as white velvet, was highly prized in England. And so barges would take the wheat to Grayson, where it was loaded on a steamship, went all the way to San Francisco, was offloaded, and then put on clipper ships, sailed around Cape Horn all the way to England, and was, again, prized by bakers in England. In the early part of the 20th century, Roy Pike, a true innovator in farming, founded El Soyo Ranch, which is one of the largest farming operations of its kind in the United States. It was immediately adjacent to the Rising Sun campus, and Pike began pumping water from the San Joaquin to irrigate a wide variety of crops and to raise various livestock and poultry in the area. In the 1930s, farms in western Stanislaus County also became a destination for refugees from the Dust Bowl and flooding that occurred in the Midwest in the 1930s and 40s. And the area saw construction of some of the country's first government-sponsored housing for migrant farm workers. People like John Steinbeck spent time at El Soyo Ranch doing research for Grapes of Wrath, while Ansel Adams photographed El Soyo Ranch for an extensive photojournal that appeared in Fortune magazine in 1945. Dorothea Lange also came through the area and did some extensive photography, which is seen in this slide here. During World War II, an auxiliary naval air station was built just next to the school, and right down the road was a prisoner of war camp, if you can believe that, where German and Italian POWs were also loaned out to farmers to help harvest the crops. We recently found photographs as part of this hidden history that we're learning about of Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald performing at the Naval Air Station. These were in an obscure Wisconsin museum. We've now copied and reproduced some of these photographs and put them in the courtyard at Rising Sun to tell the story of this special little place. As enrollment peaked at approximately 65 students in the 1940s, it was felt that there was a need for a new campus, and a facility was constructed after World War II, which is the facility that we use today. And for the next 60 years, however, the enrollment did not spike as they thought it would, and it remained between 30 to 40 students. In 2009, we had to make the decision to close Rising Sun for a variety of reasons. It was just not functioning well as a K-5 school, particularly with standards. We were still housing a K2 and a 3-4-5 combination class, if you can believe that. And so Mr. Hodge and our assistant superintendent came up with the idea of, we have this beautiful facility on 10 acres, 8 1/4 of which is really farmland. Let's turn it into a farm and garden operation for our transitions program. The other advantage into turning it into a transitions program and taking back that program is our students now avoided what was often a 60-minute bus ride one way to a transitions program out of area. This campus transformation was slow. We know what the economy was like in those years, but we kept the facility going with a lot of hard work from our students, our parents, and community volunteers. I've put together a very brief video that kind of gives you a flavor of what we've been doing out there with these community work days and how we've been able to engage students with the community. This is actually a project that I and some of my graduate cohorts had to do as an innovative activity using a wire coat hanger. So we created lavender drying racks out of that. The students actually helped us assemble and hang those. But in addition, we brought the community together to do some other projects on the farm.
How does an ordinary wire hanger help sustain a school focused on teaching life skills to disabled adult students?
Superintendent, we've been having a few technical issues today, so thank you for your patience.
How does an ordinary wire hanger help sustain a school focused on teaching life skills to disabled adult students? By repurposing a simple wire hanger into lavender drying racks that can be used to create sellable products, Hot Team 20 created definable, measurable value and sustainability through innovation for the Rising Sun Transition School and its students.
That gives you a brief overview on what these community days kind of looked like. And as happy as we were, and we will we'll continue to do those. There's plenty to do out there. We've also been able to make some more significant investments that you'll see here in a minute over the last 2 years. It's exit out. Okay. And then go back in. There we are. Okay, we'll just get back to that slide. So over the last couple of years, and we also leveraged a California Career Pathways Trust Grant to help with this so that the site can serve not only our students in the transitions program, but give our students in our alt ed program through their plant nursery management class a chance to come out and work on the farm, as well as our FFA students, and interact with the students in our transitions program as well. Because again, there's plenty of activities to do and accomplish here. So over the last 2 years, I just wanted to highlight some of the improvements that have been made. Our Lavender Field and Production Center, the construction of material bins, purchasing of a tractor, a beautiful commercial greenhouse and additional equipment storage, water reclamation system. We used to have really bad flooding off of our roof. We now divert that into a pond, and that actually provides some relief to our well because we can irrigate with it. We have a small fruit and nut orchard and vegetable planters, and introduced chickens this year, and the students have started to sell some eggs, and I can tell you they're very tasty. I bought a dozen, and are adding a propagation garden and identification trail. But I think the pictures really tell the story. You know, these before and after pictures of what the campus looked like after sitting vacant for a year and how far it's come. In terms of the goals for students, this is a life skills development program, and we want to teach not only vocational skills, but social skills development, functional academics, and independent living. Because of the location and what we're able to do, we're also able to offer a wide variety of activities that Mr. Hodge will be talking about in a moment. And the way the program is structured is we do have a full-size cafeteria, believe it or not, for this small little school with a kitchen and stage and 4 classrooms in addition to the outside facilities. So Raquel serves as our instructor for the Life Skills Development Program and provides the academic component for our young adults. And then working with Amy, previously Rich, will develop the lessons that go along with that in terms of the field work, inside and outside. So we've got an enterprise center, which is our old cafeteria, and then we have the farm and garden operations outdoors. We also recognize that this is a perfect opportunity and location for not only community-based instruction, but actually community engagement, where the instruction comes to the campus and the community comes to the campus. And again, Dave will talk about a little bit more about our plans for next year. So these broad goals, again, are met with the transition goals and transition plans for our young adults. And I'd like Mr. Hodge to come up and talk a little bit about the students we serve, how this program meets their needs, and what our plans are for the future.
Thanks. Pretty cool. It is truly a pleasure to be a part of the Rising Sun program. It is a regionalized program, which means we not only serve students from Patterson Unified School District, but we also serve students who are eligible for transition programming from other school districts. We've picked a few up from Empire and from Newman Crows Landing, which is a good deal for them. The population is 18 to 22 years old. You guys were previously talking about regional center involvement. We actually involved the regional center when they're 21 to start talking about the students' clients' vocational interests, present levels of performance, so that they get an understanding of the client that they're going to be receiving when they're 22 years old, their interests, what they want to do, things that they like, things that they don't like, sheltered instruction, sheltered living, all that gets talked about so that when they do turn 22 years old, they actually move on through the regional center and they have a better understanding of their needs and wants. It's a variety of handicapping conditions that we serve out at Rising Sun. We've got intellectually disabled, other health impaired, traumatic brain injury, specific learning disability, deaf and hard of hearing kids. And obviously with that variety of disabilities, there's a variety of abilities that we have. And the nice thing about Rising Sun is there's something for everyone out there. And that's truly a neat offering that we can provide something for everyone. In fact, obviously William is a graduate of the program. He's a custodian for the school district. We actually have another young man who wasn't able to be here today. He's actually an office clerk, graduated from Rising Sun, and he's also in charge of playground supervision. So it definitely takes a good look at vocational interests of the students, and we do a fairly good job of providing those opportunities for them as they move forward. So if you think back, Phil showed that slide of the Enterprise Center and the Culinary Kitchen. This is the farm and garden. This particular slide shows the activities that the kids can be engaged in, and I'll talk a little bit about what's offered out at Rising Sun. So we have plant propagation, we have irrigation going on, seasonal crop production and rotation, landscaping, the greenhouse plant production. Again, that's an elective course for the kids at the continuation high school. And it's so popular that there's actually a waiting list of kids that want to be involved in the Rising Sun experience. So that's a pretty neat deal. What do we do with those plants that we actually have in the greenhouse? We turn around and use them actually for campus beautification. We also have a local landscaping firm that has pledged to purchase those plants for their own use. We have lavender harvesting going on currently right now. For those of you who don't know, lavender harvesting is in season right now. As a matter of fact, Dr. Alfano, Mr. Rowe, and a couple of district office staff were out there probably 2 weeks ago, I think, and they ended up harvesting 75 pounds of lavender, which will go forward. It's a fruitful, bountiful harvest. We also have vermicomposting. We had a little accident with the vermicomposting last year during the summertime. It's a little hot out in Rising Sun, and we didn't keep the soil moist enough for the worms, and so we had a little setback with the soil production. We were going to use the casings from the vermicomposting as soil enrichment, and we're going to continue to move forward with that. We just got to resupply our worms out there. So we also have beekeeping. 5 beehives. They're a young bee population right now. We've got the bee suits, we've got the smokers, we've got all the other accoutrement for making honey, which we'll be starting to produce once the bees get a little bit older. And again, that's not for everybody. It's the variety of choice that the population, the clients have to be engaged in any of these activities. So it's a really a unique experience for them to be a part of the program. The Enterprise Center and Culinary Kitchen, this is the kind of the fun stuff that the students can be engaged in. Obviously, Farmers Market is a biggie. And all of our products are actually produced by the kids. They're handmade. And we're not perfect. For those of you, making lotions isn't as easy as you would think it is. And so our first batch of lotions actually ended up separating. So we had the oil on top and the substrate on the bottom. So we had, 58-ounce cans of unused product because we messed up. But again, I think you learn more from your failures than you do your successes. So we went back to the drawing board, and we actually ended up producing some really nice products out there, from lotions to hand soaps, bath products, lavender sashes. Our biggie right now, one of our hot sellers, is aprons. So we've designed aprons for teachers to hold their pencils, hold whatever else they need. I purchased 30 of them actually for our autism program. We offer safe food handlers certificates. We've been refurbishing furniture since its inception out there. We offer the weekend wellness program, which is a really cool deal. Usually on Tuesday or Wednesday, the site staff will send out an email to all of the school sites reminding them to fill their weekend wellness buckets up that are in the staff lounges. And then on Friday, clients from Rising Sun along with staff will drive to all the school sites, pick up the products, perishable and semi-non-perishable items, separate them, and we deliver them to families who need them for a little extra food during the weekends. So that's again, community involvement. Sack lunches for the homeless. So we've paired with a local Catholic church, and the clients on Wednesdays will make sack lunches for the homeless and deliver them in the park. We are pretty fortunate to be close to Modesto Junior College, so the clients are enrolled at Modesto Junior College. They primarily for physical fitness. There's yoga, there's weightlifting, dance, there's track and field, swimming, a little bit of tech, not a lot, just due to the time constraints. As most transition programs go, we do offer community-based instruction. Public transportation. Phil mentioned that we go to the local humane society and walk the dogs for that organization, which is it's a good way to get out into the community. I think one of the difference, I believe in rigor in our program. So rather than sending the kids down to the local supermarket to buy products to basically work on money exchange, we actually start that on a Monday, and we focus on like healthy eating and healthy living, and what does a 750 caloric meal look like? How much protein is involved in that? How much wheat? How much grain? So we started on Monday, and the clients actually pick the foods that they want to choose. On Thursday, they go to the store, they purchase the foods, and on Friday, they actually make it. So it goes back again to it's much more than just the exchange of money. It's about a lifestyle. Seasonal products are produced out there. Thanksgiving, centerpieces were made and offered. One of my favorites is Christmas time. They make edible ornaments, and so before I leave for Christmas, I always buy 15 or 20 of those. Unfortunately, they never make it to the Christmas tree because they're eaten by the time I buy the tree. I've got a freshman and a junior, and they just can't seem to stay away from that. So, if you haven't guessed, Rising Sun it's truly about community and a community venture. We could not have had the success for the program or the facility without community support. And I think, again, Phil kind of touched on it, that's where we're a little different. Most transition programs, they believe, and rightfully so, in community-based instruction, but we bring the community to Rising Sun. And without the local volunteers, the Patterson Garden Club, Lions Club, local farmers, church groups, Seroptimists, all of them have spent time at Rising Sun with our students. And each of those groups brings a unique skill set, and it really does contribute to making Rising Sun the successful venture that it's actually become. Goals for next year. Llamas and goats. So apparently they cohabitate nicely together. So those are going to be delivered out to Rising Sun. You saw a picture of the corral, so that's where they're going to be housed out there. We need to do a better job of transitioning our special day, mild, moderate students out to Rising Sun. So that's going to be one of the focuses. We want to get them more involved in the activities that are going on out at Rising Sun, from crop production, crop rotation, to being involved in some of the farmers market activities that go on. We need to do a better job of facilitating that transition. The community cafe is something that we're going to establish where local service industries like yourselves, if you are interested, can come out and actually take a tour, go through your agendized items, and the clients at Rising Sun will prepare a lunch for you. We can work on service delivery, meal preparation, hosting, meal presentation. All of those sort of things are going to be of value to our clients if they're interested in any kind of food service industry. So the website is the biggie. We're going to work in conjunction with the high school business logistics program to get our website up and running so that we can actually sell all of the variety of products that we have. We really want to, so for instance, if Joe from Idaho has a fancy for 14 pounds of lavender sashes, he can place that order online, and the special day class at the high school will work in conjunction with the business logistics career pathway in the fulfillment of that order and the shipping of that order. So again, it's taking advantage of programs that are already existing and piggybacking on them, and making it a better program. And most of our products are sold internally right now through classified and certificated staff. So they'll order some stuff. And what we're going to do is, I mentioned the weekend wellness program and how we travel to different school sites. So if Mrs. Smith from Northmead Elementary places an order for $32 worth of bath products, staff at Rising Sun can fulfill that order, and part of as they're traveling around to the different school sites for the weekend wellness program, they can actually deliver the program, the product to the classroom teacher in her classroom. So again, it goes back towards that whole idea of piggybacking on already existing programs to further the Rising Sun program. Let me see here. I guess that's pretty much about it. So again, we certainly appreciate the commission and the award. The generosity of the Grazer family is certainly appreciated. I can guarantee you that the $5,000 will go towards good use. Many of you know, and I'm continually reminded, the special education costs are continually infringing upon the general education budget. And this will certainly go to good use out of Rising Sun. So once again, I appreciate your time and effort and everything. Do you have any questions?
Well, I think we probably have a number of questions and comments.
Okay.
So first, let me just start by saying welcome and thank you and congratulations. And did I hear you correctly that you have meeting space with freshly prepared meals available?
Mm-hmm.
Great. I think a number of us may be contacting you separately about that.
No problem.
So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then let me just start with a question. You are developing a phenomenal skill set in these students. And William is a fantastic example of somebody that graduated from the program and is now employed by the program. So congratulations, William. Can you tell me, is there a mechanism or is there a bridge that you see your students using these skills as they go out into the world, into whatever next step that they're connected to?
I think that taking advantage of the location and just the agricultural nature of it is a fairly rural community in Patterson. Where are the jobs? They're in landscaping. They're in the farming industry. Again, one of the local landscaping firms has actually pledged to hire our kids coming out that do have the specific skill set necessary for them to be employable. So yeah, I do think that that we provide some unique opportunities for our clients out at Rising Sun. Again, William is a shining example of the success. We do have another one, Adrian, who wasn't able to be here today, who was actually the valedictorian of the high school.
Nice.
Who went on to graduate and is now an office clerk and again spends time with playground supervision. So where we can employ them within the school district, we'll certainly do that. William had, again, a very specific skill set and an interest that he was very much interested in custodial work. So that fit nicely, and being able to, and he wasn't offered any, special privileges. He had to go through the interview process just like everybody else. So it wasn't like, this was a courtesy job. He earned it, and rightfully so. So yeah, working closely, again, with Regional Center, we do involve them at 21 just to kind of let them know what the interests are that the students have. And we try to, again, prepare the Regional Center for these clients and letting them know what they're interested in and what they're not interested in, and working closely with that organization for when they do turn 22 to move on with sheltered employment if that's an interest that they do have. So we've had clients working at the hotel. We've had clients working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. We kind of try to stay away from the fast food kind of industry, but again, there are some opportunities out there for the more traditional job opportunities. But yeah, I think it is a good bridge program that we have.
Nice.
So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, I'd love. Oh, Kristen, and who else? Oh, Leanne. Yes, go right ahead, Leanne.
Hi there.
Hi.
You mentioned that the Rising Sun School program sells products. I'm curious to know where are the profits going?
Right, that's a good question. So what, it actually goes back into product replacement. So we have established a bank account. The profits actually will go to the bank, into the bank account. What we're going to endeavor to do is actually, and it's going to take a bit of work because we're going to have to, eventually what we'd like to do is offer a salary for the clients that are working at the farmer's market, for instance, or that are engaged in the actual product manufacturing. It takes a little bit of work. You've got to kind of take a look at what a normal person, whatever normal is, I still don't know that term, but what they can produce in an hour, and then you have to prorate it, and you have to do some work with the Commerce Department in terms of prorating the amount of money that a person could earn in an hour. And it is a cumbersome process. We are engaged in doing that right now. So eventually they'll be, we'll cut them their own checks and they'll be making their own salary. Absolutely. Currently, basically, it goes right back into the bank account and it's used for product replacement. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Kristen, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. So, so we can talk offline about the sub-minimum wage. So in California, we're really working to not do some, and I know, I understand the conundrum, believe me,
Yeah.
I definitely do. But what I wanted to commend you on was some observations that I made during your presentation, and some real standouts that I think is what we're trying to encourage in the state in terms of best practice. So those include the community collaboration that you've put in place and the leveraging of multiple funding sources to really try to piece together this puzzle, because it's not just, it's a lot of things that have to come together. So we realize the complexities of that. I think you guys have done a really good job of figuring out how to blend all those different things together. The other piece is around ensuring LRE, and by having, you really are also doing that by blending those programs with the CTE pathway. And I think that that's a really nice way to sort of, that's the idea, is to really take those different funding sources. The 18 to 22 skill building that you're doing is remarkable in terms of what we are hoping for students to be able to get really tangible job skills between that 18 and 22. Certainly you're doing that. I think the trick is how to leverage the things post 22 to support students and our Department of Rehab. There's a lot of sort of things, new things on the horizon. We've been having a lot of conversations with our partners at DDS, Department of Rehab, and Employment Development Department on how we can support every student to work, and that we really move away from the sheltered workshop options. Just because they're not being supported federally. Right. And we're, as a state, really interested in mapping to jobs. And I think you guys have a really good example of how you've looked at what are the job skills and what are the jobs in your community, and your students are being prepared in those areas. That is super powerful, so commend you on that. And also the regionalized nature of the program, that from an economies of scale perspective, you drawing from a number of districts is really also the sort of ideal model, that it's not just each district is trying to do something all by themselves, but you use that economies of scale. So I just want to commend you from a state perspective for all those things. And we look forward to hearing from you, and also to really work with you on what the barriers are for your students to be able to get into those jobs. Because I know that a lot of this, we're having conversations at the state level that may not yet be translated down to regional and LEAs. And so would love to keep that ongoing dialogue going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Havania.
Quick question. I was wondering, is there a need and or desire to extend your program beyond 22 years of age?
We've thought of that. We've had an opportunity. Just logistically, the way the transition programming is set up, and the way the current structure is, it is possible, but again, the traditional transition program is 18 to 22, and so when they turn 22 years old, basically it moves on to the regional center and the responsibility of the regional center working together. And we do have a really good relationship with the regional center. It is possible for students to carry on in terms of their vocational interests out of Rising Sun. But for the most part, when they turn 22, they actually receive a certificate of graduation from Rising Sun Transition Program, and they move on. But yeah, it's a possibility. It's a good question.
Fantastic. Okay, Christina, and then the Assembly member.
Hi, great program. Thank you for coming. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just want to add that, and they're still relatively new and not yet available in California, but will be opening this year. Rather than looking at sub-minimum wage options, or looking at them and also looking at opening ABLE accounts for the students. That allows them to keep their benefits and use it as a
right.
savings plan. That might be a better option for them after 22.
Yeah, that's really about educating the parents too, letting them know that they're not going to lose any of their benefits when they're employed. And so we do take an interest in that. We are active in conservatorship as well. We'll help parents with conservatorship. So it's a holistic approach. Again, we definitely value our clients out there and want what's best for them in terms of their education and actual vocational employment opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Assemblymember Thurman, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I understand you have a question, comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Thank you for the presentation and congratulations. My question picks up a little bit off where Commissioner Libas was going about in exchange for, and I have to admit, I have not started in the lotion making industry, but I have to say that I am now inspired to try.
Pinterest.
I was interested in, is there an opportunity and has the school and the community partners considered a social venture? And I know that they often struggle. It's really hard for any nonprofit effort to generate enough profit to cover all the work that goes into it, especially providing the life skills and the coaching.
Yeah.
But there are opportunities to get investors. There are opportunities for revenue that might help offset some of the operations for the school or become compensation for the students. All the young people I know want to earn money. And so if that becomes an opportunity to earn a little bit in exchange for the work and the learning and the training, I wondered if there had been any conversations about potentially starting a social venture to sell these products to support the program.
Not yet, but that's a really good idea.
I'm full of ideas, but somebody has to implement them, right? And it's,
we're good at the implementation phase of it, but I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest with you. Again, we're just kind of mom and popping it right now. And I suspect that when we get the webpage up, it'll be really interesting to see what interest is generated out there. That is an excellent idea. That is a very good idea.
We'd be happy to talk to you about it offline. There's some nonprofits that have gone from relying on, like all of us, government and foundation grants. One in particular that's become 100% self-sustaining just from the businesses that they've created. And I'll be honest, that's more rare. Most struggle because when we're supporting young people, there are a lot of costs that are hard to show on your bottom line to support our young people that traditional business investors don't understand. But some have done really well, like Delancey Street in San Francisco. They run a restaurant and a moving business, and they sell Christmas trees every season. And their founder, Mimi Silbert, has figured out a way to become 100% sustaining just from their businesses. And so it's something that I've worked on and I'm interested in, and I was interested in if you all were pursuing that.
We will be. I'll be in contact with you, and we'll establish a partnership because I think I hadn't even thought of that. Again, this whole thing is really taken off just with the economy, the turn in the economy, and the vision of Dr. Alfano and the school board. For a long time, it was duct tape and rubber bands, and now that we've had the influx of funds, we're really able to kind of get this program going, and I do enjoy and would love to entertain that idea of establishing a partnership and the employment options that would be available for.
It's a lot of work, so I don't want anybody to be mad at me, but if you want to come to Delancey Street, they've got a great restaurant in San Francisco. I know it's very hard, but I'd be happy to host you all there to learn more about the program. My other question was about something that Director Wright touched on, that your program is touching on all kind of skill building opportunities, career technical education, and you mentioned students get a food handling certificate.
Food handling certificate.
And that is something that I think is going to be in growing demand, particularly as the food industry, where people, I'm learning about this. People get they call in an order for the dinner that they want, and someone sends all the raw ingredients already packaged, and all you have to do is throw it in the oven. And these food distribution centers are growing, and the food handler card, to me, seems to be entry into many careers, including this industry that I understand is ramping up so quickly and they're struggling to find people who can work in these food distribution centers, and of course in the traditional grocers. You know, someone who has a food handling certificate can be very marketable, and I'm wondering if there's a way to create a full pathway to help students who are interested move further into the food handling professions.
Yes, we have actually had some of our clients participating in one of the retirement homes, making lunches for them out at the retirement, again, lunches for the homeless in the park. In terms of it being a career pathway, that's certainly something that we can continue to look at. You're coming up with some really good ideas. We need to have a great conversation with you. Yeah, that would be definitely a viable program. I can envision that easily. So yeah, it's a great idea.
I have not had the chance to use it, but I took a tour at a company called Blue Apron that I understand is nationwide and is growing dramatically in California, and has great needs for a workforce. And so, anyway, thank you for the presentation.
I appreciate
and congratulations.
The actual safe food handling certificate is, we're taking advantage of technology, so it's all done online, which is a really slick deal for the population that we have out there, which is again using existing technology to further the vocational interests of the kids out there.
This is exactly how these new food distribution centers work. It's all through online ordering, and so, anyway, it sounded like an opportunity. We'd be happy to talk with you offline if you think it might be.
Great, appreciate it.
Thank you for your work.
Great stuff, great advice.
Great, thank you.
I think I'm taking away more than you guys are today, so we appreciate it.
Well, if you're still open to questions, we do have a couple more.
Yeah, sure.
Kimberly?
I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment, but I really appreciated the community collaborative as well. I think that's particularly powerful when our student skills are showcased and there's that interaction, because as they're building a portfolio, those letters of recommendation from community members and businesses in which they have worked and had that opportunity are really powerful when they're out in the workforce. So I appreciate kind of that reverse model so much. So many times we think of going out, but bringing the community to us is really important and powerful as well. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have a really a community that is truly involved at Rising Sun, and they enjoy going out and spending a little bit of sweat equity and working with the kids. Like I said, our own superintendent was out there, hacking away at lavender a couple weeks ago. So yeah, it's a nice little place to go when you have had a rough day. There's no internet access, or very limited, so you can get out there and kind of get lost. Yeah.
But take the credit, because it is hard to get community involvement and having them count. So I think you need to do that patting on the back, which is what we're trying to do here, because I have done transition programs, and that is a really difficult thing to do. So hooray for you guys.
Well, so I want to thank you, and I know that we are on a little bit of a time crunch, and I also understand that it is the NASCAR drive around the Capitol. So, if you haven't seen that, you'll get to see it. But we would love to offer you a monetary award to be used in the program, and so Kristen Wright is coming down, and we would like some pictures. While you were talking, I wanted to welcome Assemblymember Thurman, our liaison to the legislature. Thank you for joining us. Jennifer Jones, Johnson, thank you. Education policy person for the governor, thank you. Advisor, thank you for coming. And Glenn Price, welcome. Chief Deputy, thank you for joining us. And so if you are all from Rising Sun willing, we would love to have you all join us in a picture. And so strategically, that might be a challenge, but typically before you all get up, I'd love to have Kristen come award you with the gift, and then we'll all come up here to the dais for a picture.
Thank you. So on behalf of the California Advisory Commission on Special Education as their Executive Secretary and State Director, we congratulate you for a job well done. Thank you for setting a great example and a high bar for our students with disabilities in California. And I have here to present to you on behalf of the commission your model of the $5,000 check that will come to you. Make sure to keep an eye out for that in the mail so it doesn't go in anywhere else. And your just your award itself, which consists of a very fancy award.
Wow.
And so on behalf, again, of all of us, including our officials that are here today, congratulations. Do you want to?
Yeah, here you go. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So if we could invite our officials to come up, and we'll have maybe the commissioners, we'll do like in the round right here. I think it works the best because we can do 2 levels. And so are you going to adjourn now for lunch, or are you going to adjourn after? Are you going to come back? Just so we know what people know what they need to do.
So I would love to give Assemblymember Thurman the opportunity to raise or to take any questions that commissioners may have as our liaison. So I'd love to take a picture.
While we have
everyone come take a picture. Commissioners, come back to your seats, and then we'll adjourn for lunch. Commissioners, thank you for coming back to your seats. I'll ask that we reconvene. And again, I want to thank Assemblymember Thurman for being the liaison to the Assembly and carrying our voice over there in the building. And we know that right now there are many, many issues on your plate, and appreciate you taking the time to come over and engage with the commission. So thank you. I'd like to hand the mic over to you for any comments that you might have, and then open it up to any questions or comments from commissioners.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of the commission. And the last thing I ever want to do is get in the way of lunch, so I will keep my comments to a minimum and just ask if there are issues that you want me to take back to my colleagues. As you know, we completed our budget last week. There are a number of things there for education. A few things in the area of special education I think we need to do more and certainly need to do better. But if there are things that you'd like me to take back, I'm happy to take those back or take any questions that you might have.
Commissioners, questions, comments? I will tell you that we had a robust conversation yesterday about some legislation, and so do appreciate you engaging with us. I think we are figuring out as a commission the process for having a unified voice, and rather than taking a strong position on a bill, being able to offer more context to you and other legislators as you are discussing bills. And so there were a few that we had on our plate, and I anticipate more for our August meeting, and would love to just have your ear in the context and the potential implications, both positive and unintended, that come from some of the bills that are in front of you.
I'd be happy to get the notes from the conversation. I mean, as you all know, this year there have been a range of bills introduced, from changing the amount of time that a family would get advance notice for an IEP, to making sure that IEPs were written in the language or presented in the language of the family. There are a number of bills, including one that I'm doing, that emphasizes more school-based mental health services. And so there are many things. I'd be happy to get those notes. I do serve on the Assembly Education Committee, and would be happy to share the context of the commission with members of the committee and with other members of the legislature. So I'll get the notes and go from there.
Fantastic, thank you. Mildred.
Quick, could we hear where the mental health bill is in regards to your legislation?
Right.
Yeah. It's AB 254, and it would provide more dollars to school districts directly to support mental health services, school-based mental health. We've been fighting to give school districts maximum flexibility in how they would use it and to define where their greatest needs are. That has raised some challenges for some at the state and various departments. We won't make any names. I think you can guess. as people raise questions about what is the responsibility of existing behavioral health agencies, county agencies to school districts. And it sparked a lot of concern about fights and turf battles between behavioral health at the county level and school districts. What we've done is we've said we'd like to use the bill in a way that it would incentivize better collaborations between county health and behavioral health agencies and school districts, and that no agency would receive a grant if they weren't proposing to have a strong partnership between the school district and the county behavioral health agency. We'd like to use funds from the Mental Health Services Act that have been identified, that have been accruing for administrative purposes. Those funds have at the moment been earmarked to do some things that we think are also very valuable, like expand mental health services for college students and provide more suicide prevention services. So there are some new questions that we have to deal with about where we thought we'd found the perfect funding stream for $30 or $40 million. It turns out that everyone thinks that they found the perfect funding stream, but the bill has passed the Assembly, and it will be moving on to the Senate for consideration in Assembly education. Thank you.
Fantastic. That is a critical issue, and I know there's a few bills that have touched on the issue. And one of the points that we heard from our mental health subcommittee meeting yesterday was the need for translation services, if you will, between all of the different sectors that are engaged in these conversations. So different departments, different bodies, all continue to not speak the same language. And so I appreciate the discussions that you have encouraged around crossing over the different realms that we all are living in and getting to building some bridges between those. So thank you. Commissioners, other questions or comments? Leanne?
Thank you for coming, Assemblymember Thurman. I have a question in particular to SB 354. I just want to know where the bill is at the moment, because when I did my research, it said that it's currently in the Assembly, and I want to know if it went through the second reading.
One of the things that I try to do is tell the truth, and that is if I don't know the answer to something, is let you know I'll get you an answer. I am not familiar with that bill. Who's the author? SB 354?
That is Portantino bill.
Which one?
The translation bill.
It has not been heard in the Education Committee. Mr. Portantino has 3 bills that I know of that are coming to education. And so I can get an answer for you about where things are on that bill. The bills that we've seen in his committee have, as recent as yesterday, deal with support for students who are leaving court and juvenile schools, and that they would have a transition plan created for them once they leave those schools. He has a bill that we expect to see shortly that proposes to change the start of the school day, to make the school day start after 8 a.m. or 8:30. I'm not sure the start time, but pushing the school day back. It's based on all of this literature from pediatricians and others about brain science, that if we give students a chance to start school later, that they will do better, and that we should not expect them to start before 8, but that they would start closer to 8:30. And so that bill is coming up, and there's been a lot of interest and debate on that bill as well. We'll get you an answer on the bill, his IEP bill.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That'd be
so
great.
just on that topic, just looked at LegInfo, and Senate Bill 354 is scheduled in Assembly Education right now as of today to be heard on July 12th, 2017, but obviously scheduled to change. But that's the committee as of now.
I can give you an answer. I think it's going to be heard in Assembly Ed on July the 12th. There you have it.
Takes a village, that's right. Well, Assemblymember
Could
Thurman,
I ask a
that is-
question back? Were there particular concerns from
Absolutely.
the commissioner about that bill that you would want me to know before I vote on it, and so that I understand your interest and concern?
Well, there has been some talk yesterday in regards to this bill. We did talk about specifically the timeline, and there were some concerns about it. One of it particularly was that someone wanted to push the deadline, the timeline, I mean, to 30 days. And I just wanted to point that out, that the bill, anyone can correct me, was originally set the timeline for 30 days, but it has changed during its process, and I would like that to be addressed, because I do support the bill, but I would like to see like the 30-day timeline, because I feel that it's much more better to get that the translation in a timely manner, and they're doing the 45-day timeline. I mean, anything can happen after the IEP meeting between.
Thank you, Leanne. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I appreciate you bringing that up, and this was the robust conversation that we had. So we will make sure that you get the notes, because there are pros and cons, and we did not come to a consensus at the commission, but there is, you know, separate from that, I think there is information that you would benefit from having going into the conversation.
Happy to hear it, and always happy to hear if there's a official commission-sponsored position, and if not, we're always happy to hear from individual commissioners, whatever your viewpoints are, that you would want me to know, so that we're looking at all sides on a particular bill.
Sure.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, we'll be happy to talk offline.
To go back to your comment earlier, I appreciated you raising another bill, and I think the role of the commission really is to provide you and the education committee some context as you're reviewing bills. So we'll make sure we get the number and we get that one on our next agenda. Depending on where it is in the process, it may or may not be helpful, you know, given our meeting timeline, but we are happy to provide some feedback and our thoughts as a group on the content of the bill. So thanks for raising that one. And if there are other bills that are coming before you that you would like the expertise from the commission, we'd be happy to respond.
I appreciate it, and thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Commissioners, we do have a little bit of a time change. If you are willing, I'd like to move item 13, which is our Special Ed State Director's Report, up to do it right now, and then we will break for lunch.
So I just have a few quick updates to share with you, and I, again, like Assemblymember Thurman, don't want to be between you and lunch, because I know it's getting later in the day. But want to make sure, I wasn't sure I could be back in time for my 1:45. So a couple things that are happening here at the department and statewide. As you know, we have our new accountability system and our new dashboard that is going to be illuminating areas of need in specific districts. And so as part of that, California is sort of re-envisioning its system of support for LEAs in California. Like, so if we do see someone that comes up with in the red, especially for your interest, for students with disabilities, what happens? Who helps them, and who offers our tiered level of assistance in the state? And so those conversations are very robustly occurring in the development stage right now across multiple entities, and that information and those proposals will be brought to you so that you can take a look at sort of how California is looking at organizing their system of support. In terms of internally, I think I shared with you before that special education, that the CDE itself is reorganizing internally and moving from 4 branches to 3. And as part of that, the branch that we're currently in is no longer going to be a branch. And so special education has been moved into the curriculum and instruction branch. So it'll be a curriculum, instruction, and learning supports, yet to finalize the name, but we will be with our counterparts from early childhood, from expanded learning, from curriculum and instruction and frameworks, from professional learning. And so looking forward to those robust conversation with our colleagues, sort of probably where we need to be placed. It's a good move. Our new deputy will be Tom Adams. And Many of you know that the dyslexia guidelines will be coming out. Those should be coming out in the next few months. Some of my team in CDE has been kind of doing a roadshow to talk about those guidelines and how they're to be used. Been a lot of conversations. I think you have something planned for your August meeting to have folks come and talk about those guidelines. So look forward to those. Those came out of legislation from last year, as did legislation AB 2785, which was English learner guidance for English learners with disabilities and students with disabilities who are English learners. And that work has started and has launched a really deep and wonderful collaboration with the English Learner Division. And so our staffs have been working really closely together to get a work group going. Kayla will be representing the commission on that work group, and as will a number of other statewide experts and parents and stakeholders who will get together to provide guidance back to the department on the development of those guidelines. As you know, the LPAC assessment for reclassification from being an English learner to not being an English learner anymore is critical for our students with disabilities to not stay in English learner status into perpetuity because they can't show their proficiency on the LPAC. So there's that legislation going on now, SB 463, that is working to address some of that. The EL guidance will address sort of the specifics of what do you do when you have English learners who have IEPs, who may be able to demonstrate that they are proficient or that they have, they can get out of that classification. So more to come on that moving forward as well. And as I said, you have your liaison here who will also be able to provide you information. Just to also let you know, I've been out in the world a lot, saying a lot of things, and I thought maybe you'd be interested to know what I'm saying. And maybe if I'm saying something that doesn't quite resonate with you, you want to let me know. So a couple of the big picture things are that we're really talking about mapping to job. So for every student in California, the goal is that we're preparing students in California to get a job once they leave our system. That is really why individuals go to school, get education, and whatever they do post-secondary. Jobs are what connects people to community and also helps us in education have something really significant to bump up against. So if we have that expectation for every single student in California, each student in California, that we're mapping to that job, that as a parent, and I don't know for you all who are parents, but for me, thinking about my own daughter who has very significant disabilities, to think about her having a job when she's 3 wasn't something I was thinking about, nor was I thinking about for the last decade. But now that I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about all the things that she needs to have in place. You've heard me talk about it before. Communicative competence is the big one, because how will I know what she even wants to do if I can't know what she knows and what she wants? And so all those things, including access to curriculum and grade level standards, all the things that we talk about in here that we want for students, why are we doing that? We're doing that because we want to give everyone an equal opportunity to get a job and to be a participant in their community. So I've been talking a lot about how we really have to start an early intervention at 3, letting parents and families know the why, and that we have a responsibility as educators to really put that vision in their minds so that we don't limit anyone at 3. And that's really what I see as I'm going out happening, is that when we start in very segregated settings with very low expectations, that doesn't change for the trajectory of education. And so that catalyst at 3, at preschool, can determine a person's future. And that's really scary and really gives us a huge amount of responsibility to have a bigger vision for kids. And so been talking a lot about LRE in preschool. I've been to some really great programs that have blended or have stacked funding, taken Title I, state preschool, Head Start, and special ed funds to blend together preschool programs that are inclusive. I still see mostly segregated preschool programs. I know there's some talk about it being because we don't have universal preschool, but the reality is federal law expects students to be with their general ed peers starting at 3, and that's a whatever it takes scenario. And finally, we've had a lot of conversations about the audit requirement for non-public agencies, non-public schools and non-public agencies. You may have heard some comments about it before. Just before I came in to this position, we had some changes in our division, and it was illuminated that there is a state requirement in federal and in state law that says all non-public schools and non-public agencies are required in certification by the state to have an audit, a certified audit. Now, that has not been happening for quite some time for some of those, for those smaller agencies. Some of the larger agencies have to have them under their nonprofit status and other things. So, but there is sort of a set of non-public agencies who have never had that requirement before. They were sent and advised last year that they would have a 1-year window, and that starting this year, they would have to have that requirement. There's been some discussions at the legislature and in policy staff conversations about how to correct that, that perhaps that was something that was in legislative language that was an unintended consequence of just a header in some state statute. That conversation is still continuing, and there's plans to address it. But for this year, because we're getting ready to certify, that law or that piece of statute is not changed, and we still have that in state statute that everyone has to have a certification. That said, we understand that we don't want any children or LEAs to be in a situation where they can't provide the related services. So we're figuring out the language to send out to the field over the next few weeks to let them know that there will be at least another year by on that requirement. So there will not be someone who does not receive certification because they don't have an audit. Just stay tuned for some more specific information and language about exactly what that looks like. Again, I want to make it clear that we're not about having small businesses close down, nor are we about not having kids be able to get the related services, because we know the shortage that's out there around service providers. So it's in our interest is making sure that kids get the services they need. And so that's the lens by which we're focusing on, but we're also we don't make the law, we interpret it and enforce the law. So that's sort of the position we're in. I hope that doesn't sound too much of a gray area, but again, we will be sending guidance out in the next week as soon as we get something that jives with all the policy folks. So other than that, if there are any questions, happy to answer. If I forgot something, I'm accessible to all of you. So for next time, for your next meeting, we have asked one of our partners from the Department of Justice to come and talk about some of the interesting things happening around corrections. And Assemblymember Thurman will be interested to know that there's some really interesting positive models that they'll be focusing on that are showing some really great sort of progress around trauma-informed care for our youngsters who are incarcerated.
A lot going on. Very nice. Thank you. And thank you for the update on how you're framing the discussions out there in the field. I think it's nice for us as a field to hear what are we mapping to and what are we looking towards and how are we talking about our population. So thank you for that frame. So commissioners, we are a little bit off of our schedule. And so I'd like to go ahead and adjourn us for lunch and have us come back at 2 o'clock instead of at 1:30, if everyone is okay with that. Commissioners and members of Rising Sun and Assemblymember Thurman and Dr. Sandoval, you are welcome to join us for lunch. And Venetia, where is the lunch located?
It's in room 1801, which is behind personnel, where your mental health meeting was yesterday.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Otherwise, we will convene back here at 2 o'clock for the remainder of our agenda items. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, welcome back. I do love this meeting. I love the goal award. I love the goal award process. Thank you guys for your feedback and input. And in the spirit of continuous improvement, I think last year afterwards, maybe it was 2 years ago, we reevaluated the rubric to make sure that we were reviewing through a lens that lined up with what our priorities were. If you were a reviewer and you have feedback on the process, if you will email Barbara and I before we start the process for the new year, and that process starts in October, it goes up on the website. So if you do have suggestions, if you'll email us, and that way we could bring them forward at the August meeting, and then update the rubric and then post it. Yes, Stephen.
I think it would be great for us to be able to somehow house these award winners somewhere.
Oh, that would be great.
In a sense, whether it be on the special ed department website that gives best practices, or we call it what it is, the award winner, and that we have these on there so that we can refer them to other people that are out there when they want to know what practices are and those kinds of things. So I would suggest that.
That's a great idea. I do believe they get highlighted in the special edge.
They're also on the CD website and on the ACSE site.
Oh, on the ACSE site.
All of them, do they?
I think it goes back about 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we will take a look at that, and maybe we could send it out on the listserv or something so that it's out there in the world, because I did not realize that. Okay, so we are on item number 12. Results of the officer election. So Mildred, would you like to report out on the results of our election?
Yes. No, let's see. Really very surprising. The chair is Gina Plate, and the vice chair is Barbara.
Woohoo! All right.
Is there an inaugural ball? Will that be happening? Ooh.
That sounds lovely. There you go. Perfect. Okay, thank you, Mildred, for sharing that process for us. Barbara, congratulations. I look forward to serving with you again. Thank you. Nice. We already did item 13. Thank you for your flexibility on the reordering of the agenda. I'm moving to item 14, general public comment. Venetia, do we have public commenters today?
We do. Kelly Connell-Sandler as the CTA liaison.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon.
It's red. Yeah, good. Super. You guys are quick and ahead, and I'm sure your luncheon was incredible. That was just so exciting. It's just remarkable, absolutely remarkable. Great choice. The nice thing about coming here is especially if you've been coming here for a long time, is seeing the fruition, and that's what happened yesterday and some of it today too. Even more important to me is, from the CTA standpoint, is hearing the inclusion of teachers, which is always our goal in hearing, and the ideal for us would be that from the ground floor, as things are being proposed, that they were included, but it's wonderful as more inclusion for us as well as happening. Some positive things, because I just had 5, and I have brand new eyes from cataract surgery, no lenses and no reading glasses, and guess what? They work, so how nice is that? So yeah, so here, let's hear it for better health care in America too, and I was insured, hey, how about it? Okay, anyway, the fruition, fantastic, the closure on some things, but never closure, because we're always reevaluating and moving forward, which is positive. Small group again, marvelous every time, absolutely marvelous to share ideas and then come back together and see them put into action. I'm very pleased that you're going to pursue legislation. I know from our experiences in CTA, it's critical to us. We're always on it. There's always a subcommittee for Leg. We always have Leg upstate. My email every day is flying with emails. You can barely keep up with it. And they change. You know that you take a watch position because they change. But special ed in particular has been impacted by it, and I'm really pleased that you're looking for avenues that don't present a conflict of interest but allow you to advocate as you do. The agenda setting, I think, is wonderful. Input to it, chances to revise it as you go and make it meaningful. Chances, because you have so much on the plate, when you do it, to have time to discuss and bring it back. I think there was the pace was a little bit calmer than sometimes when you're really jam-packed. One of the things that came up in our group yesterday was the possibility of you reviewing your bylaws, and there seemed to be some confusion about, where you are in it. I just became president of retired. We had 5 sets of bylaws because nobody had reviewed them. So it's a useful tool to have one person even just review them for you and bring that back. I just wanted to share. For us, it helped a lot. But the best thing of all, as always, and thank you for all your efforts, was to watch the award and to see everything that we believe, and frankly, everything that when I started training in the early 60s was what we believed in and did, and that was the model, and it's really nice to see. And we did away with some programs. I was sharing with Gina before lunch. I watched them take down the ag buildings, the small animal, the nursery, the greenhouses on my campus, the auto repair, so that everyone could go to Stanford. Well, no, and it was meaningful and it was appropriate for so many. I got nothing against Stanford. But I'm just saying that it really is meaningful, and we're talking about, yes, let's be together from the get-go, from preschool, but let's make sure that we provide appropriate instruction. I was thrilled to hear Kristen say about the fewer divisions and bringing in together and be where curriculum is. So my first comment about getting in on the ground level. That's it. I wish you a wonderful summer, and we'll see you in August, and that you all look cool, which is slightly amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. It's okay. Okay, item 14, we're now moving on to item 15. This is our agenda building for the August meeting. And I mentioned earlier that we are on a very, very tight turnaround because of the time frame to get this document through the process of getting it up and into the website. So I do have a dead computer. I do have a list of items that each meeting, we generate a list, and some meetings I'm able to get them all onto the agenda, and some we carry over. So we do have quite a number of items that we are carrying over from previous meetings, and here I can run through a few. But while I'm pulling it up, are there items that you'd like to make sure that we hear on the August agenda? Barbara?
We would really like Richard Connect to tell us
about. Yes. Okay.
Tell us about the plan.
And you sent me his contact info.
I also gave it to Benicia.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is just a small update, but can we get an update on where the Bakersfield school that was approved during our last meeting?
Kern County?
Yeah,
Yes.
the Kern County. Can we get an update on where that is in the process?
So I can tell you that the commission wrote a letter in support. What we learned, and I think we actually learned this in the meeting, there was confusion about whether or not that item had to go to the state board. We then got clarity afterwards. The item did not need to go to the state board. The decision was solely held at the superintendent's level. The superintendent did approve that school. And so I don't know, well, you know what? I don't know that that's been a formal position out in the world yet. I think we submitted our letter and there was discussions, and I don't know that there's been a formal, I take that back. So yes, we can put that on the August agenda to get an update. Thank you. Other items. So I can tell you for the August meeting, other items that we've talked about having an update on the diplomas from the community of practice.
No.
October, that's right. That's right, October.
Because then everything should be written and you would be able to see all the papers.
That's right, great. Barbara Boyd has agreed to come and talk about the community of practice around transition and best practices and programs that are happening out in the world. We have a juvenile justice update that Kristen referenced in her update. We've asked for an update on the credentialing discussions that are taking place, because I know there's lots of discussions happening right now. we've asked for the dyslexia work group update. You may have tracked, actually, this is very exciting. One of the teachers of the year is, well, the teacher of the year in California is an inclusion teacher, which is one of the first times a teacher of the year has been recognized as a special ed, or is a special ed teacher. So we've invited Megan Gross, who is a teacher down in the Poway Unified School District, and her supervisor, Jennifer, to come and give a presentation to us. And Megan was actually one of the 4 national Teacher of the Year finalists. So they have agreed to come to the August meeting. And then, let's see, dyslexia work group, I said. There's a number of entities talking about special ed policy institutes. So institutes of higher learning that are expanding to open a special ed policy institute. So we've invited one person that's engaged in that to come. I think any other items? We have legislation. So I think what we decided earlier was we were interested in hearing in Assemblymember Thurman's bill, AB 254, and we were interested in discussing AB 834. So those 2 bills for sure. And commissioners, if you have other bills you want us to consider, please let us know.
The bill that's dealing with the start of school time would be one that I'd like to know some understanding of, what it is.
Okay.
And what are the elements of it, and see if there is any implications in special ed.
That's SB 328. So I would be happy to pull the text of that bill, and then we can review it. Or folks, you could pull it from LegInfo, review it, and decide if you want to have it on if it makes sense to have it on the agenda. Let me know.
Tell me the number again.
SB 328.
Richard Connect.
Got that?
Oh, you did? Okay.
Mm-hmm. What else? Anything else? That is a pretty action-packed agenda. If we also include our normal assessment and accountability items. Venetia?
Get Barbara's community of practice update that she wanted to do as well?
Yes, for October.
Got that. It's October? Okay, great.
Okay, well, I think then, what other items do we have, commissioners? I think we have had an action-packed meeting. Mary Grady. I did. I would like to say that it is that time of year again to be considering, well, so, okay, thank you, Mary. So every year, the annual report, it is up to us as a commission to draft the annual report. It is up to us to look back and think about all of the meetings that we've had, the actions that we've taken, the guidance that we've given to the field, and report out to the field on what we've done. Report out to our appointing bodies how we've utilized this opportunity that we have to come together and what actions we've taken. You will be, and for those of you that have engaged with Mary, thank you for that, because there is not a magical mystery person out there. This work comes from us, and it would not happen if it was not for Mary. So let's be clear about that. But the voice must be the commission's voice. And the only way it's the commission's voice is if it is your language and if what it says reflects our position. So you will be getting a draft of the annual report to review within the next week or so. Please Take the time to read it, because this will be going out to the appointing bodies. It will be going out to the fields. And again, it must be your voice. Your voice and your comments have been characterized in the annual report. And so please make sure that they have been characterized the way that you intended, and the messages are the messages that you intend for the commission to put out there. Thank you. At the August meeting, we will talk about the process that we will utilize going forward for the next year to make sure that we are documenting and articulating our position well and accurately through the year. So at the end of the year, we're not tasked with writing a lengthy report and trying to remember all of the actions that we took. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I had forgotten that in our group we talked about bylaws. Would there be a chance of getting a copy of the bylaws?
Sure. We can, Venetia, could you email those? Thank you.
I would also like to offer that on August 2nd, that afterwards that we have a meeting at my home. As we did last year, I know, but it was the beginning of the year last year. It helped us in kind of bonding together as a commission to meet. So I thought I'd put it out there early.
Oh, thank
Okay?
you.
So if we would look at doing that. Please, on the
Fantastic.
2nd. I know you'll be at Stanford somewhere. Yeah. We'll raise a glass to you. But it's a good way for us to start the beginning of the year.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. The only person, I only know of 2 people that will not be here for August.
And just not a meeting, a social event.
Thank you for
For Bagley
clarifying. We are
Community,
having a
not
social
meeting,
event
Social event.
for Commissioner, no. That has nothing related content-wise to the work of the commission. Okay. Any other items, either related to the August meeting, related to our work, or things that we should know as we depart and go back into the heat? All right, well, commissioners, thank you. I appreciate your time and your energy and your passion for this work, and I wish you safe travels.